אפיקי מים כנפשי תערום אליך אלוקים. צמא נפשי לאלוקים, צמא נפשי לאלוקים, לך מתי יבוא ואראה פני האלוקים. הילדה על אפיקי מים כנפשי תערום אליך אלוקים. כהילדה על אפיקי מים כנפשי תערום אליך אלוקים. צמא נפשי לאלוקים, צמא נפשי לאלוקים, לך מתי יבוא ואראה פני האלוקים. הילדה על אפיקי מים כנפשי תערום אליך אלוקים. צמא נפשי לאלוקים, צמא נפשי לאלוקים, לך מתי יבוא ואראה פני האלוקים. על אפיקי מים כנפשי תערום אליך
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל. השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, שא עיני אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ. אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל. השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שומר ישראל. השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות, שא עיני אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ. אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות, שא עיני אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם השם.
הדרך אל האושר, רואה צופיים מכשולים רבים, עת לחייך לסלוח, לוותר לשכוח, גם אם זה קשה שנינו יחד את הכל עוד נשנה. לא צריך לברוח, את האמת למרוח, אני ואת לא נשנה את העולם הזה. לא צריך לברוח, את האמת למרוח, אני ואת לא נשנה את העולם הזה. את שתינו נוסע מלמעלה, מבקש תשובות לשאלה, אין מענה ואיש גם לא יודע האם בסוף הדרך ניפגש. זה הזמן לסלוח, לוותר לשכוח, גם אם זה קשה שנינו יחד את הכל עוד נשנה. לא צריך לברוח, את האמת למרוח, אני ואת לא נשנה את העולם הזה. לא צריך לברוח, את האמת למרוח, אני ואת לא נשנה את העולם הזה. זה הזמן לסלוח, לוותר לשכוח, גם אם זה קשה שנינו יחד את הכל עוד נשנה. לא צריך לברוח, את האמת לברוח, אני ואת לא נשנה את העולם הזה.
שלום לך דודי, הצף והאדמון, שלום לך מעת, רק החמורים. שלום לך דודי, הצף והאדמון, שלום לך מעת, רק החמורים. שלום לבית דודי, לקראת חרוץ, סדר להושיע, מוצלח כבן ישי, רבת בני עמון. שלום לך דודי, הצף והאדמון, שלום לך בעת, רק החמורים. שלום לבית דודי, יפהפייה, התעוררי אהבה, מצלצל לי קולך, אמיר בכל פעמון. שלום לך דודי, הצף והאדמון, שלום לך בעת, רק החמורים. שלום לבית דודי, שלום לך דודי, הצף והאדמון, שלום לך מלך, רק החמורים.
Okay, get the Torah study on the road here. Okay, that is that. All right, welcome Ben and Ariella. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. Shalom. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good to see you too. Okay, so we're gonna dig right in. We've got Desiree with us. Hallelu et stereo. Hallelu et ya stereo 4. I have no idea how to mix the English and the Hebrew together there, because whenever you write in English and Hebrew together, it jumbles the words. So if I read from left to right, it says et stereo for ya hallelu. If I read from right to left, it's hallelujah stereo for et, or for aleph tuf. So one of these days, Desiree, now that I know and remember your real name, you'll enlighten me exactly how to say your username. Okay, all that being said, welcome everyone else who's on Facebook and on YouTube. So we are digging right into, well, we're going to start this week's Parsha. It's a double Parsha. Starts in Leviticus 12. So let's get a preview. Some interesting stuff here. Okay, so we get to move a little bit away from the technicalities of the sacrificial system, which, quite frankly, are absolutely fascinating. There's a certain way, I think, to study it, and there's a certain way not to study it. The way not to study it is to sit in the synagogue and just listen to it being read to you. Not that I'm against that. I love, even when I go to my local synagogue here, my favorite part of it's a Orthodox rabbinical synagogue, and my favorite part by far of the entire service is when we do the Torah reading. But that's not the way to study these technical chapters of the Torah, if you ask my personal opinion. The way to study them is to make charts, catalog, make lists, find similarities and differences. And when you do that, then you start seeing everything kind of comes together as this beautiful system, this beautiful, almost logical system that is kind of complex, but makes sense at the end of the day. Okay, so, but we're going to move a little bit away from that. So, I mean, we're still in the technical aspects of, well, now we're going to be getting into purification from various actions or various things. That's the technical word, things that make a person impure, and how to cure that impurity. So we're going to be speaking about impurity after childbirth. Okay, when a woman, not a WOMYN, or is it now W0MYN? I don't know what it is anymore. At any rate, one of those people gives birth. Then how do you, that creates a ritual impurity, and what's that all about, and how is the woman ultimately purified from that, so that she can once again return to doing the things that require one to be in a pure state, namely eating any of the holy foods, any of the foods dedicated to God, or approaching the temple to do sacrifices, or the tabernacle to do sacrifices. Then we're going to get into what is called leprosy, which is a pretty bad translation. We spoke about this a lot last year. We'll speak about it again. That's chapter 13. Chapter 14 continues with the cleansing from the leprosy and other different types of leprosy. Not only a person can catch, again, quote unquote, leprosy, but so can homes, for instance. And so we'll talk about that. And then that is going to bring us into chapter 15. And in this portion, we're going to 1533, which is basically yes, it is the entire chapter. And we're going to be speaking about various things that can make men and women enter a state of impurity, and how to purify themselves from that. So basically what this entire Parsha is dealing with is how people get into a state of ritual impurity, right? Te'umah, tameh in Hebrew means impure. Well, that's the way it's usually translated. I'll offer an alternative translation as we go through it, which I think is more simple and more direct. And then how one cleanses oneself from that ritual impurity, from that te'umah, to return to a state of tahara, or purity or cleanliness. Okay, so that's what we got ahead of us. And let's dig right in, okay? Just to put things in perspective, I don't think I'm going to go back even to chapter 11 this time, even though it's very, very interesting. that's the chapter that has to do with kashrut. I may read the last paragraph or two, but that's about it. Before that, if you remember, in Leviticus 10, we were speaking about Nadav and Avihu, the two eldest sons of Aaron, who he lost when they brought something that went against when they brought incense that went against the specific rules of the Yahweh worship cult, or the I don't like to use the word cult because it's most, even people who study the Torah don't understand. They think it means a cult, like Asian Torah or something like that. Cult meaning the worship service of Yahweh. So they violated those specific rules and were put to death directly by God. And then we went into some other stuff regarding rules for the priests. And before that, we'd spoken about the initiation or the inauguration of the priests, or the beginning, basically, of the sacrificial service, right? So again, as I pointed out last week, in Leviticus 9, the first time the sacrificial service is begun is in Leviticus 9. Okay, we're already about almost halfway through the Torah, right? Leviticus has 26 chapters, 27 chapters, and so that means if we're in Leviticus 9, we're already about halfway through the Torah, and the sacrificial or the cultic worship of Yahweh has not even started until now, right? All of Genesis obviously wouldn't involve it. Exodus spoke about the design and then the building of the tabernacle, and then Leviticus gives us some rules for the sacrificial, or should I say for the cultic system, the cultic worship. And then finally in Leviticus 9, that's when the sacrificial or the cultic system starts, right? So it's about halfway through the Torah, and that's the only time we begin speaking about the sacrifice, right? So pretty interesting to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go back to Leviticus 11. So our parsha starts in Leviticus 12, but we're going to go back. I think we will do 2 paragraphs, okay? Because it also speaks about the issue of tameh and tahor, okay? So for instance, if we look here in Leviticus 11, this is speaking about what we call kashrut, okay, what we call kosher and unkosher, okay? And let me just find where it first uses the word. Here we go, for instance, okay? So in Leviticus 11:6, okay, it speaks about the arnevet, which is usually translated as rabbit, okay? So the arnevet, because ki ma'alat gera he, because it chews its cud. Farsa lo hifrisa, but it does not have split hooves. Okay, so therefore it is what? The word here is tme'ah hi lechem. It is tme'ah to you. Okay, what is tme'ah? Tme'ah is impure. That's the way it's usually translated. I don't really like that translation. I actually prefer the translation dirty. I think tme'ah is best understood as dirty or unacceptable or vile, maybe is even a better word. Okay, let's go with dirty or vile. Okay, let's use vile for this one because here it fits pretty well. Okay, so it is vile to you. Okay, it is dirty to you. And as I mentioned many times in other videos, the whole idea of kashrut is so simple. The rabbis have made it so complex that you can't even see it for what it is anymore, as that they've done with so much of the Torah. And the idea of kashrut is actually really, really simple. Okay, it's basically, first of all, let's always keep in mind that kashrut only involves animals. Okay, there are no restrictions on plants. Yes, there are restrictions on plants in the sense of if you plant a tree, then you cannot eat it for the first 3 years, right? Or if you have but there's no species of plant that the Torah tells us we are not allowed to eat. Okay. The only restrictions in food that we're not allowed to eat are with the animals, okay? And that's already a big hint. And the animals are separated within the animal world, okay, into vile or disgusting and tahor, clean or acceptable, okay? And really the idea of kashrut is so simple, and it's it is that God has determined that there are some things that are just not appropriate for human beings to be eating. Okay, now he's basically at this point in time kind of given up on the rest of humanity. Okay, so if you, I'll just pick a random nation, not to pick on, let's say, of 100 different nations, but I'll just choose China as an example. If you, the Chinese, if you want to go eat, rats and snakes and maggots and whatever else you want to eat, that's disgusting. But that's kind of, it's sad, but it's your business. Okay, but with Israel, God says, now it's my business. Okay, you people are not like the rest of the other nations. You're in a covenant with me, and you've got to stick a little bit closer to what I want. You've got to represent me in the world. And if you're sitting, actually, crickets, munching around on cockroaches and snakes and monkey ears, then that is not acceptable. You're not making good representation of me as God by doing such disgusting things. And that's the whole idea of kashrut. It's really that simple. Okay. Yes, there are other aspects to it as well, such as the forbidden fats usually fall into kashrut, but that actually is a different story. That has to do with the sacrificial system, because the forbidden fats, what we call the forbidden fats, the chelev, that is God's food. Okay, He likes it. He says it's mine. That is my lechem, my bread, my meal, and it creates a sweet smelling scent for me. Right. So that's what God likes. God likes, quote unquote, likes the fat, the forbidden fats. That's why we don't eat that, and that usually falls under the rubric of kashrut. But so when I say kashrut, I'm talking about the specific element of kashrut, that certain animals are acceptable to eat and certain animals are unacceptable to eat. They're vile. They should be vile in our eyes. Okay, and that's the language that's used here in Leviticus 11. Okay, I'll just give you a quick story. I remember watching one time. I watch a lot of cooking shows because I'm very into gardening and cooking and all of this kind of stuff for years and years and years and years. So I used to watch Anthony Bourdain, right, who actually was Jewish on his mother's side. I believe his mom, I think, was half French and half Jewish, if I remember correctly. And so he had this series where he would travel around the world and eat the cuisine of various cultures. So he was in, I believe it was Vietnam, and they invite him to a big meal, and they serve him a meat dish, and he asks what it is, and they don't know how to say it in English, so they say, oh, it's squeezle. And Anthony Bourdain's like, squeezle? What's squeezle, right? And so he eats it because he eats pretty much anything, or ate pretty much anything. He committed suicide, as if you know. His story, and so he's eating this squeezle, and he's wondering what am I eating? Okay, now I know what squeezle is. So they were serving him. Israel are not supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be sitting around eating all kinds of anything that creeps and crawls and runs and swarms on the ground and through the sky. To our portion is again that the language of kashrut, there's no such word as kashrut in the Torah, in the Tanakh, anywhere. The only place it first appears is in the book of Esther, and it doesn't imply, it implies being ready or being prepared for or being appropriate for the battle that is coming up, that the Jews are going to be fighting their enemies who have massed against them. That's in the Purim story, right? But it's never called kashrut anywhere else in the Tanakh. It's always put in the language of tameh and tahor, clean and unclean, or tameh is unclean and tahor is clean, or as I prefer, dirty and clean, or vile and clean, or vile and acceptable. Okay, we'll go with vile for now. Okay, and that's what these food restrictions are all about. There's certain foods which are what we would call today unkosher, but the Torah calls them vile or disgusting. Okay, and there's certain foods which are acceptable, and what the Torah calls tahor, which would be clean or acceptable or appropriate. Okay, and that's it. That's all that kashrut is all about, honestly, or this part of kashrut. Okay, so let's pick it up here. We'll pick it up here in Leviticus 11:39, and here we have. So it says, "V'chi yamuth min habehema asher hi lachem le'achla hanogea b'nivlata yitma ad ha'arev." Okay, so anyone v'chi yamut, and if yamut min habehema, if a mammal should die. Behema really means domesticated animal, but it really is referring only to mammals, sheep and goats and cattle and other big game like that. So if an animal should die, asher hi lachem la'achla, which is permitted for you to eat, or is permitted to you to eat, okay? Hanugea b'nivlata yitma ad ha'arev. Anyone who touches its corpse, yitma ad ha'arev, will become impure until the evening. Okay, so now this is a different use of the word tameh. Okay, yitma means he will become impure. Okay, so we saw before that, for instance, the arnevet, how do you say it in English again? The rabbit. Okay, we saw that the rabbit, where was it? It was 8. No, it's a chazir. It doesn't matter. Was called tameh, was called disgusting or inappropriate. Now we have another idea, which is that we can become impure. We can become in a state of, we could become of unacceptability. Dirtiness or unacceptability for what? Dirtiness or unacceptability for approaching God. Okay? Meaning, we cannot do anything related to the cultic worship when we are in a state of dirtiness, right? It's logical. Okay, you wouldn't go if you were invited to the president to the White House to eat a state dinner with the United States, who in my eyes is still Donald Trump, over there, then you would your face, right? So you might, if you're going to Walmart and buy, I don't know, eggs, which apparently now in the United States cost like $35. But if you were going to the White House, then you would not go in a state when you're dirty and disgusting. It's the same way in the Torah, okay? You're allowed to be in a state of impurity, in a state of dirtiness, but you're not allowed to go to God's house. Foods that are consecrated to God. In order to do that, you've got to be in a state of cleanliness, okay? And state of cleanliness doesn't necessarily, and this is one of the examples of how you can become dirty or unacceptable to approach God, okay? To approach God's house, shall we say, or God's inner province, okay? And that is if you touch a corpse of an animal, even if it's an animal that it's acceptable for you to eat. So you find it, you have to take it out to the trash heap or whatever the case may be. If you have to move that, if you have to touch that dead body, then you are now yitma. You have now become dirty yourself. Okay, dirty meaning you can now not go to the house of God and bring a sacrifice or do anything else which requires contact with consecrated stuff. Okay, so that's the idea of so those are the two different uses of the word tameh, right? We saw that the shafan, which is usually translated as the hair or the hyrax, okay, that there are certain animals in terms of kashrut which are unclean, which are disgusting, which are vile, okay, which are off limits, okay, which are inappropriate. But then we saw that we can also become in a state, we can also achieve a state of dirtiness or vileness by by doing certain acts. Okay. And that state is always temporary. There's always a way to get out of that state of vileness. Okay. But while we're in the state of vileness, we can go ahead, we can go live our lives. We can go to the shul, do whatever we need to do, go to God's. So that's to put everything in perspective, the two different uses of the word. Okay. So here in this case, we see that quote unquote kosher animal, then he is yitman ada erev. He means unclean, or he remains dirty until the evening, basically until the sun sets. Okay, once the sun sets, then he's automatically back in a state of cleanliness. Okay, but until the sun sets, then he's not in a state of cleanliness. So if he moves the dead goat at 11 o'clock in the morning, then for that day he cannot go to the tabernacle. Okay, this is honestly not much of a problem if someone lives, let's say, in the Golan Heights or something like that, right? In the territory of the land that was given to the 2.5 tribes across the Jordan River, then it's not much of a problem. You're not going to the Beit HaMikdash every day anyway, okay? But if you did need to go to the Beit HaMikdash, or if you did enter a state of dirtiness, then you would not be able to go to I'm using Beit HaMikdash, Mishkan interchangeably, but we'll say to the Mishkan, okay, until the end of that day. Okay, verse 40. And actually, I'm sorry, I made a slight mistake, which is here, if you just touch their dead bodies, okay, afterwards we're going to get to if you lift their dead bodies. So physical contact with the dead body, then that would apply. Now, here, if you eat of their dead bodies, of the corpses, you must wash your until the evening. Okay. So now this is a little bit more serious. You're not just touching the corpse; you're eating the corpse, which, by the way, you're not supposed to do. Okay, the Torah tells you that which was and that which died on its own. But if you do it, then these are the consequences. You remain in a state of dirtiness until the evening, and you also have to wash your clothing. Now, it doesn't say when you have to wash your clothing, okay? So my opinion is, I think most interpreters interpret this as meaning you have to also wash your clothing by the evening. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think what that means is that clothing now becomes dirty, and before you're allowed to wear that clothing to the Beit HaMikdash, it has to be washed. It doesn't have to be washed the same day. It can be washed, in 2 weeks down the road, but you cannot wear that clothing to the Beit HaMikdash until it's been washed, okay? Because it's dirty. It's come in contact. You've lifted the dead animal, and now that dead animal has come in contact with your clothing, and so it's not appropriate to... Yes, Alpha Omega, you can ask. Absolutely, yes. Maybe not even at the end of the session, because usually at the end of the session, I'm already beat, but maybe we'll take a break at a certain point, and we can throw it open for just I won't say random, but for open question and answer at any given time. Okay, I'll let you know when. All right. So right. So now you've lifted up this carcass. It's come in contact with your clothing. This clothing becomes dirty, and it has to be washed before you can wear it to the Beit HaMikdash. Again, I'm using Beit HaMikdash, Mishkan interchangeably. I'm just so used to saying Beit HaMikdash because that's all they talk about in yeshiva. But when I say that, I just mean the Ohel Moed, the sanctuary, basically. Okay, the temple, the tabernacle or / temple area. Okay, the Tameh, which are basically both the same thing. The temple was just a permanent house, whereas the tabernacle, the Mishkan, was a portable house. Okay, the Tameh ada erev, and you are unclean until the evening, or you're dirty until the evening. So the same thing. So if you touch the carcass, the dead body, then you're just unclean until the evening. If you lift the dead body, now you've touched it, and now your clothes have touched it. So you're unclean until the evening, the same way as if you touched it, but you also have to wash your clothes. It makes perfect sense, right? And that's what I'm trying to say. This system is really, really, really logical and makes a lot of sense when you kind of pick it apart. If you just read through it like they do in the synagogues on Shabbat, then it's a real snoozer. You're going to fall asleep halfway by the third aliyah, you're already, and then when they say Yafo, whatever, David ben Moshe or whatever, then you're not even going to hear yourself being called for the aliyah because you're going to be fast asleep. So the way to read through the stuff is really to analyze, chart, compare, contrast, etc. Okay. So this is eating the dead body. This is lifting up, carrying the dead body of the animal. And it's the same thing in both cases. Okay, so you're eating, right? And I guess the idea is you're going to be touching your clothes. The food is going to be dripping on your clothes. So now you're going to wash your clothes as well as remain unclean until the evening. If you lift up the dead body of the animal, same thing. Okay, you remain unclean into the evening. There's nothing else you have to do. You just wait for sunset, then you're clean again, and then you also have to wash your clothes. Okay, maybe we should make a little chart since that's what I've been saying. So let's make another one. Let's go to our spreadsheet. And by the way, anyone who wants access to the spreadsheet, I have a whole bunch of stuff here. And just let me know. I've cataloged a whole bunch of things. I can give you, viewing access to it. It's not a problem at all. There's a whole bunch of things here. So let's see. I don't think I have a tab for that. Sending request, which means my internet is acting funky. All right, we'll get back to that in 1 second. Let's move on a little bit. All right. No, wait a second. But the internet is acting strange. Maybe, you know what? I think I'm going to go on a note. Alternative internet. 1 second. 1 second, please. Let's see. That's going to work. All right, it came up now. Okay, so no, it's still doing it. The internet where I live in a very, very small village, and the internet is very, very problematic. But I'm going to try to see if I can tether off my phone. Sometimes that gets better results. Can you guys hear me? By the way, can everyone hear me okay?
We hear you fine. Sometimes
Okay.
it cuts out, but yeah.
Let me know over the next 5 minutes because I'm trying a different internet. I'm going to try off of my cell phone service rather than the Wi-Fi here. Let me know if it's better. If it is, then I will try to use it more than the regular internet. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to go back here. And what do we have? Let me go to the beginning. Passover laws, Omer laws, sons of Jacob, blah, blah, blah. El Mesheva 400. I don't think we have Leviticus laws, but I think that's something a little bit different. So this is really the offerings. So that really shouldn't be Leviticus laws. This should really be called sacrificial laws. Laws of sacrifices. Okay, and let me change it down here. Rename, and we'll call this sacrificial laws. Okay, and okay, now let's make a new tab. So to go over here, boom, and let's rename that, and we will call this impurity and purity. It's the common translation. Okay, let me just grab this because I think I'm gonna that's gonna be a little different, but let's grab it anyway. So just copy this over here. Just get the template. Okay, so let's see. We're gonna call this laws of purity or impurity and purity. Impurity and purity. And we'll keep it real simple. So we want verse. We'll say impurifying action. And then purifying action, right? So what causes the impurity, and what causes the purity? Okay, that should be a good start. We'll leave a place for comments here, and I don't know if we need either of these columns, so I'll erase them. We'll leave a place for comments here, and we can add other columns as is necessary. Let me get rid of these background colors. Oops. Background color. None, except for this. This goes back to being green. And I think we're in business. Let me get rid of all of these things. Gone. Okay. So, and I don't think we need a law number. Well, maybe we do, just to refer to it. Okay. So, all right. So our first one here is, there are more before this, but we'll pick it up here. Okay. So, verse 39. So that's Leviticus 11:39. So we're going to put it here, Leviticus 11:39. Okay. So the impurifying action, well, let's just add one more. Right. Let's say category. We'll put here mammals. Okay. That's mammals. Okay, just to the impurifying action here in 11:39, and nogeh b'nivlata, okay, is touching carcass of mammal. Okay. And then the purifying action, now put this over here. Hello, move. So mammals over there. All right, we'll put this in capital. Touching the carcass of a mammal, and the purifying action is going to be yitma ada erev. Wait till the evening. Wait until the evening, sunset. Okay, so action, reaction. All right. The next one was also in, no, it was in Leviticus 11:40. So we have two here, but we can put them together. Okay, eating or lifting the carcass of a mammal. Okay, eating or lifting the carcass of a mammal. And this time, the purifying action is going to be wait until the evening. Put it like this. And to wash books. Okay. That's where. Okay. And that's Leviticus 11:40. That involves mammals. Okay. All right. So there we go. We're in business. All right. Any questions, any comments so far? All right. Sounds good. All right, Ariel and Ben. Any questions, any comments so far? Hello, Luke. Hello, Desiree. I already said hello to Desiree, but hello again. All right, let's move on to verse 41. Okay. So, and we're still in kashrut, almost at the end of this chapter, just again to get into the whole idea of what is impure and pure, okay, and the different ways use v'chol sheretz hashoretz al haaretz sheketz hu lo yechel. So any swarming thing that swarms on the land, okay, and we'll get some breakdowns for that in a second. Okay, sheketzu. So sheketz is usually translated as disgusting, or here they translate it as an abomination. It's basically the same idea. It's kind of a synonym for tameh. Okay, it's just using a different word, maybe a bit more of an intense word, right? To say it's like absolutely, disgusting. It should be considered disgusting to you. Okay, but it's the same concept. It's the same general concept of well, not as it's used here, but when we were speaking about the rabbit earlier, that it's tameh, okay? It should be considered vile or off limits or not appropriate for you. Here, I think the word is even a bit stronger. Sheketz, maybe would be like filthy or or gross or absolutely disgusting. I think the word sheketz implies even more disgusting, and we are talking about insects after all. Okay. And it should not be eaten. All right. So we're talking about basically things that swarm on the land. Okay, and we'll get some examples here. Okay, verse 42. But we don't see any here laws of something that makes you become impure and then a result to purify yourself afterwards. Okay, so there's nothing to go into our spreadsheet now. Kol holech al gachon v'kol holech al arba ad kol marbe re'layim. L'chol sheretz hashoretz. Let me skip the biblical accent for a second. Hashoretz ala aretz lo tochlum kisheketzem. So anything that goes on its gachon is its belly. It's the same word that was used as the punishment for what the snake in the Garden of Eden was cursed with, or its punishment that it's going to go on its belly, on its gachon. Okay, v'kol olech al arba. So anything that goes on its belly, like a snake, would be the perfect example, right? Let's even see that for a second. In Genesis 3:14, okay? So Genesis 3:14. I'll just grab this, okay? Yomer Yahweh Elohim el nachash. So Yahweh, God said to the snake, Ki asita zot, because you have done this, right? In other words, tricked Eve into eating and then offering to Adam the forbidden fruit. Arurata mikol habehema. You are cursed from all of the land animals, right? So here behema is used, right? A snake is not a mammal, so it's not technically a mammal. Behema is basically a land animal, okay? A larger land animal. Umikol chayat hasadeh, and from all the animals of the field, okay? Al gachoncha telech, you will walk on your belly, v'afar tochal kol yimei chayecha, and you shall eat dust all of the days of your life, okay? And here we see gachoncha, on your belly, telech, gachoncha telech, al gachoncha telech. On your belly, you will walk or you will go. Okay? So that's the same word we see here. So anything kol olech al gachon. So we see clearly this is speaking about things like snakes, right? Because it's exactly the same word, exactly the same language, right? Holech al gachoncha telech was the curse. You will walk on your belly. And here, kol holech al gachon. Anything that walks on its belly, okay? So besides a snake, what else goes on its belly? I don't know, certain types of lizards, maybe? They have legs. I don't know what the heck else would go on its belly. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it. And I'm actually a biologist. I have my master's degree in biology. I should know this, but I can't think of anything else offhand. Okay, in marine biology, to be specific. Okay, v'chol olech al arba, anything that walks on four legs. Ad kol marber raglaim, or anything that has many legs. Okay, anything that swarms along the ground. Lo tochlum ki sheketzu. You shall not eat them because they are absolutely disgusting to you. Okay, let's just move on to verse 43 because I don't want to get bogged down. An tishakatzu et nafshatechem b'chol hasheretz hashoretz. Do not make your own selves. Do not make yourselves disgusting. Do not, dirty yourselves up. Do not make yourselves vile by eating any of these swarming things. Okay, and do not do not make yourselves impure through them. And in this case, we're talking probably about ritual impurity, but also perhaps meaning a certain sense of moral impurity. And we'll talk about that meaning of tamei when we come to it. Bahem v'nitmetem bahem, and become impure by them. Actually, this may mean kind of one is moral impurity and one is ritual impurity. Okay, but let's just move on. Ki ani Yahweh Elohechem, because I'm Yahweh your God. V'hit kadishtem, and v'hitim kitoshim, and you shall make yourselves holy, and you shall become holy, or shall be holy. Ki kadosh ani, because I am holy. V'lo tit'amu et nafshotechem, and do not make yourselves dirty, disgusting, b'chol sheretz haromes al haaretz, by any swarming thing that crawls on the land. Okay. Again, ki ani Yahweh hamaleh etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, because I'm Yahweh who brings you up, who has brought you up out of the land of Egypt, liot lechem le'elohim, to be for you a God, v'hayitim kadoshim ki kadosh ani, and you shall be holy because I am holy. Okay, and then we just have a summary sentence here. Okay, so that gives us an introduction to this idea of things that are making us impure or dirty, and the results, or what we need to do to get back into a state of cleanliness. Okay, and this actually might be the first laws for that anywhere. I believe it is actually. So actually right at the beginning. Okay. Let me just see something. No, there's more before. Okay, but close enough. Okay, so now we are going to go on to Leviticus 12, and now we're going to talk about other actions that make a person. Okay, great. You hear me better because it might be because I'm using a different internet connection right now. Okay, I think that might be the reason. All right. So now we're going to talk about other actions that make a person dirty, ritually dirty, and the things they need to do to get back into a state of ritual cleanliness. Okay. So we are now at the beginning of our parsha. The name of the parsha is, well, it's a double parsha. The first one is Tazria, and the second one is Metzora. Okay, so we're going to see the word Tazria right here, right? The parshas are usually named after one of the distinguishing words in the parsha, right? So none of these are distinguishing words. Yahweh spoke to Moshe saying, because many verses say exactly those words. Daber b'nei Israel, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, right? This is all very formulaic, right? We've seen this in many, many verses, saying, okay? And then we get to the bottom line. So this is what Moshe is told to say to the children of Israel. Isha ki tazriah uyalda zachar. Okay, so a woman who tazriah, who becomes impregnated. Okay, literally, this means becomes inseminated. Okay, I think that would actually be a much better translation. The underlying word here is zera, zud, zayin resh ayin, okay, which means seed. So kitazriya would mean to become inseminated. So a woman who becomes inseminated, right? It's usually translated as becomes pregnant. Let's see that translated here. Has conceived, okay? That's a good translation. So a woman who becomes inseminated, okay, v'yalda zachar, and gives birth to a male, okay. So that's our impurifying action, okay. So we'll put for here childbirth. That'll be the overall category. Make sure everyone can see that. Oh shoot! Why didn't you guys tell me? I didn't set up the sharing correctly. You can't even see the screen correctly. If I do that again, please tell me. You guys should have been seeing the screen the whole time. Okay. Now things are going to make a lot more sense. You haven't even seen what I've been doing. I wish someone would have told me. Please tell me the next time, okay? Now you can see the screen. There we go. Okay, so now you can see the spreadsheet. All right, so law number 3 in our listing. So now we are in Leviticus 12:2. Leviticus 12:2. So the category is childbirth. The impurifying action is giving birth to a boy. Okay, a woman gives birth to a boy. She enters a state of dirtiness, of ritual. They usually translate as ritual impurity or impurity, but I like to call it dirtiness or unacceptability to go to the temple, right? As we said before. So when I say impurity, sometimes I'll say impurity, sometimes I'll say dirtiness, sometimes I'll say uncleanliness. Maybe uncleanliness is a little better because dirtiness is in this context it might insult the ladies. I've had that happen before. They get a little bit sensitive when they think the Torah is calling them dirty. Okay, so we'll call uncleanliness. Okay, unclean, dirty, somewhere. Okay, so if a woman gives birth to a baby boy, to a male, okay, so v'tama shiv'at yamim kimei nida dota titma. Okay, so the she remains well. Let me translate it word for word. V'tamah, she enters uncleanliness. She becomes unclean. Shivat yamim for 7 days. Okay, kimei nidat dota titma, like the days of her menstrual cycle. Okay, literally Nida, dota means like sickness. Nida means like the separation or the like exclusion. But it's speaking about the menstrual cycle. So if a woman enters a menstrual cycle, we'll see this later on. When a woman begins her menstrual cycle, then she enters a state of uncleanliness for 7 days. So it's the same thing here. Okay, if she gives birth to a boy, then she enters a state of uncleanliness for 7 days. So here we can wait 7 days. 7 days. Okay. And then verse 3, Bayom Hashemini Yimol Basar Or Lato. So on the 8th day she shall, or Yimol Basar Or Lato, the baby boy's the flesh of the baby boy's foreskin should be circumcised. So kind of like, remember to circumcise your baby, right? And it's kind of like a friendly reminder because remember the Torah was read out loud, right? It wasn't studied for the most part, except for specific scribes, priests. Wasn't studied in writing, so there's a lot of repetition. And this would be a perfect place to throw in a reminder. Hey, don't forget to circumcise your boy on the 8th day. Okay, but that's not the issue here. Okay, I guess one could ask a question: if you don't circumcise it on the 8th day, does the woman remain in a state of impurity? I don't think so. Okay, but that would be a valid question at least to ask. Okay, verse 4. Ushloshim yom ushloshet yamim teshev b'dmei tahara b'chol kodesh lo tiga ve'el hamikdash lo tava ad milot yimei tahara. Okay, tahara. So for 33 days, teshev b'dmei tahara. It literally says she shall sit in the blood of her purification. And I'll explain colloquially what that means. Okay. She shall not touch any holy stuff, but really it's speaking about holy foods. In fact, I wonder how they translate it here. I just translated sancta, sacred thing. Okay. She shall not touch any of the holy foods, or I guess that can include anything, within the temple sanctuary. I'm sorry. She should not touch anything that's been dedicated to God, basically, ve'el hamikdash lo tavo, and she shall not come to the sanctuary. Okay, she shall not come to the tabernacle or the temple, right? Ad milot yimei tahara, until the days of her purification have been fulfilled. Okay, so let me just think here for 1 second. I just want to think for 1 second here. Okay, I have a question here myself, and we can look at some of the commentaries, but there are 2 ways to interpret this, okay? But let's go for the most simple way, okay? So that means that after she gives birth, okay, on the 8th day, don't forget, circumcise your baby boy. But for 33 days, and I think one can make a case actually for 41 days, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, for 33 days, she remains in a state of impurity. And the language that's used here in this verse in Leviticus 12:4 is that she shall sit in the blood of her purification, or sit in the blood of her cleanliness, of her purification. Actually, is the right translation here. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, the idea is that after she gave birth to the boy, okay, a lot of blood came out, right? The placenta and so on, and that blood is now considered to place her in a state of impurity. That all needs to kind of like heal up and disappear physically / spiritually. I don't know from a physical point of view if there is some kind of internal healing that goes on in the womb of a woman that lasts about a month, but very possibly that might be the case, or at least the Torah believes that that's the case. At any rate, this blood that came out of her when she gave birth to the boy, this has made her unclean. This has put her in a state of dirtiness, again, with regards to she's allowed to walk around and do her daily life, but coming to God's house, she can't do while she has this while she's in the state of while she has this dirtiness on her, and that lasts for 33 days. Okay, and that's it. After the 33rd day, then there's nothing else that she needs to do. And let me translate this verse again, kind of word for word. Okay. So for 33 days, she shall sit in the blood of her purification. Meaning she's got to go through a purification period to go from a state of dirtiness, of uncleanliness, to a state of cleanliness. Okay. And that takes 33 days, basically, for the blood to dry up, for everything to heal. Okay. Whether we're talking physically or spiritually or both. Okay. We'd have to do a little research. Okay, she shall not touch any of the holy things, and she shall not come to the tabernacle, to the holy place. Okay, until the days of her purification are completed. Okay, so wait 7 days. So really, honestly, there are two ways to read this verse, and we'll go into the commentaries in a second, okay? So really, this could be interpreted as, because it says here, first wait 7 days, okay? In fact, I think the second way is the right way. The 8th day, the boy is circumcised, and then she waits 33 more days, okay, until all the blood is dried up, and she automatically comes back into a state of purity. So we'll look at the commentaries in a second, but I think we need to add all of those together. So it's really going to be 8 and 33, which is 41. So I'm going to say here, and we'll correct if it turns out that a lot of the commentaries disagree with us, or they bring a very good reason. So wait 41 days, okay, 7, and I'll put in parentheses, 7 plus 1 plus 33, and even let me put here 1 circumcised 33. Okay. All right, and then that's it. Okay, once she's waited those 33 or those 41 days, then she automatically comes out of her state of dirtiness or state of uncleanliness, and she goes back into a state of cleanliness, of purity. Okay, let's take a look at some of the commentaries to clarify this. We'll go to our good old buddy Robert Alter, who's usually pretty insightful and to the point. So this is chapter 12, verse 4. All righty, chapter 12, verse 4. Okay. The Hebrew, emphasizing the counting, says literally in 30 days and 3 days. When one adds the initial 7 days, the total period during which the woman is to avoid contact with consecrated things and also evidently refrain from marital relations, is the formulaic figure of 40 days. The blood of the first 7 days is considered impure, Afterward, her blood is deemed pure, her blood purity, but she must remain in the state for 33 days before she's free of the impurity contracted at childbirth. Okay, so he's saying actually 40. All right, let me think about this again. So we've got 7 days. On the 8th day, Shloshim Yom Yamin Teshev B'Dmei. Okay, I guess this is really 33 is inclusive of that 8th day. So it's really, let's modify that. So he's basically agreeing with me, but this is inclusive. Okay, 7 plus 1. How do I want to represent this? 7 plus circumcise plus, we'll say another 32, but that's kind of violates the language of the verse. I'm not sure how to represent this. 7 plus, let's do it like this. 7 and circumcise plus 33. Okay, close enough. For a total of 40. Okay, so let me correct this to 40. Okay, so there we go. So he also understands this as meaning that all of that time is added together. 7 days, on the 8th day circumcised, and then starting on that 8th day, counting that 8th day, that's, you count 33 days, plus the other 7 is a total of 40. Okay, now he also makes another technical point here. The blood of the first 7 days is considered impure. Afterwards, her blood is deemed pure. Let's look at that in the text. So for 7 days, okay, just says she's impure, like the days of her. It's basically like as if when she gives birth, as if she were entering her menstrual period, right? For menstrual period, you wait 7 days and then automatically become pure. We'll get to that, okay? And then what he's saying is, okay, so the language here is a little bit different. So for 7 days, she is impure. On the 8th day, she circumcises the boy, or the boy is circumcised, and then she sits, Teshev B'Dmei Tahara, she sits in the blood of her purification, in her purification blood. Right, so basically what Robert Alter is pointing out is that this now already seems like, so for 7 days she's impure, right? And now it seems that she's still impure, but she's like working towards a state of purity. Teshev B'Dmei Tahara, she sits in the blood of her purification, meaning like the whole mess, sorry ladies, is drying up at this point for the next 33 days. So he's basically saying, he's making a kind of a technical, but I think a correct point that for 7 days, she's just, she's just kind of out of it, right? She's just in a total state of impurity. And then she starts moving from, on the 8th day, she's circumcised. And then at that point, she starts moving towards a state of purity, but that takes another 33 days, okay? That's basically what Robert Alter is saying. And I think it's a correct point. All right. So that is that. Right. And now we're talking about a girl. And if she gives birth to a girl, okay, so here we go. If it's a girl, then it's not like a 7-day menstrual period. Then she's impure for 14 days. In the same way as if, well, it does say as if it were a menstrual period, but it's like a 14-day menstrual period instead of a 7-day menstrual period. Regular menstrual period, a woman only becomes unclean for 7 days. Here, it's saying it's like a menstrual period, but this time it's 14 days. And then for 66 days, and then for 66 days, she sits, she wallows. I like the word wallow better than sit, right? She wallows in the al-Demei Tahara. She wallows in the blood of her purification. In other words, she slowly heals, okay? The bottom line is we see that for a girl, everything is doubled. So let's add that. So this is 4. This is Leviticus 12:5. Okay. Category childbirth. This is giving birth to a girl. Okay, and now, so it's 14 plus another 66, which is 80. So let's modify this. So this is wait 80 days. Okay, 14, then 66. And maybe we should even add, let's do it this way, 7 impure, unclean, then circumcised, plus 33 moving towards cleanliness. Let's just put towards cleanliness. Towards cleanliness. Okay, so now we're going to do this. Let me grab this again, copy and paste it over here, and just modify the numbers. So we have 80 total, 14 unclean, no circumcised. We are not Muslims. We don't circumcise our girls. Plus 66 for cleanliness. Okay, and that kind of sums it up. Now, I don't know why, but for some reason, the ladies seem to get really insulted by this one. And if you are a lady, or if you are a woman but you don't act like a lady, then please tell me why. But for some reason, I've seen over the years that women get really insulted by this one. Okay, you mean if a woman has a boy, she's dirty for 40 days, but if she has a girl, she's dirty for 80 days? What, is this because the patriarchy and the Torah hates girls, and girls were considered dirty and disgusting and unwanted? That is an absolute load of baloney. I mean, we're all, Torah oriented here, and I think anyone who really becomes Torah oriented sees just incredibly how well the Torah treats women and how protective it is of women. Contrast that with modern Western culture, where women are they're really considered dirt, right? Trash. But to be used and abused and separated from their families and turned into workhorses in the corporate environment and God knows what else, right? So just the implication that women are somehow oppressed in the Torah is just, it's insanity, first of all. But secondly, there's no implication here that a girl is, dirty because the woman has to wait double the amount of time. I would imagine that it has something to do with physiology. Okay, I don't know, but I would imagine that somehow that that after a girl is born, maybe it takes long for the womb, right? There must be some internal, I won't say damage, but some internal, rupturing of the womb when the baby plus the placenta moves out, right? There's got to be some healing. And I would imagine that for whatever reason, it was just known or believed back then that when a girl is born, that it takes longer to heal, right? That internal blood is going to take longer to heal up. Why? I don't know. If there's anyone out there who does know, please let me know. But we do see that that everything is doubled when a woman gives birth to a girl rather than to a boy. Okay. Takes more out of the woman to produce a womb. Okay, could be. So that's that. Any questions? Any comments? We are up. We've just completed verse 5, Leviticus 12:5. And we're almost done with Leviticus 12. Oh yeah, it's short. I like short chapters because they're easier to go through, right? There's so much stuff, and I always like to finish the portion. We can't always do it. Okay. So so now we have sacrifices that have to be brought. במילאות ימי טהרה לבין עולבת תביא כבש בין שנתו לעולה ובין יונה או תור לחטאת אל פתח אוהל מועד אל הכהן. So when she is fulfilled the days of her purification for a son or for a daughter, for a boy or for a girl. She's to bring a keves. Okay, keves. Let's go to our spreadsheet for animal terms. Oh, shoot. Let's go to our spreadsheet for animal terms. Spreadsheet for animal terms. One second. And we go to keves, and we see that a keves is a baby, male or female. It's a lamb, a male or female lamb, meaning a male or female young sheep. Okay, so she has to bring a baby sheep, a lamb. Ben shnato, meaning a year-old lamb, maybe under a year old, might be a better way to translate it. The olah as a burnt offering. So burnt offering is kind of your general offering, right? Uben Yonah. So Ben Yonah is a, let's go to our list. And if I don't have it, I'll edit. No, I do have it. A baby pigeon. Okay, so a young pigeon, a baby pigeon. So she has to bring either a baby pigeon or a tor. A tor is a turtle dove. So she has to bring a baby pigeon or a turtle dove. Now notice that this is one of the less expensive sacrifices, right? It's not like a goat, which costs more, or a ram or something along those lines. This is an inexpensive sacrifice, which would imply that it's kind of like a minor sacrifice, okay? But she brings that as a chatat. Chatat usually is translated as a sin offering. We've said many, many times that it's a bad translation. Robert Alter usually translates that as a purification offering, or a purification from sin offering, as we can see that here. Let's find it. An offense offering, she translates it as, okay? So it usually means purification from sin. But what is the sin here, right? There's no sin, but there is an impurity, right? It's kind of like she was in a state of impurity, and now she's moved towards a state of purity. My guess is, and we can look in the commentaries, that this means that she needs to bring a purification, we'll call it a sin offering, right? Maybe she has sinned in those 60 days by inadvertently touching some of the holy, right? Remember, she's not allowed to touch anything holy, right? B'chol kodesh lo tigav el hamikdash lo tavo, right? When she's in that state of uncleanliness, of dirtiness, she's not allowed to touch any of the holy items, any of the consecrated items, and she's not allowed to come to the sanctuary, right? So maybe by mistake, right? A lot of these sin offerings are for doing things we saw earlier. Some of them are for doing things by mistake, right? So maybe by mistake she touched some of the sanctified, some of the sacred items, or maybe by mistake she came too close, came in the province of the Beit HaMikdash. I don't know how that would happen, but maybe she did something regarding the sanctuary cult that she was not supposed to do, and therefore I'm guessing that this is what this purification from sin offering has to do with. Again, it's a minor offering because it's only birds, right? These are usually very minor offerings. I think that's possibly reflecting the fact that the Torah believes that there's a very small chance that she would have somehow done something, touched something that she was not supposed to touch, because she's obviously not going to be running up to the mikdash when she's in, recovering from a pregnancy. So I think that might be the reason that it's a minor offering. Again, we could check some of the commentaries, but my guess would be, my educated guess would be that that's why she also has to bring what's usually called a sin offering. But let's check out some of the commentaries. So she now brings us petach ohel moed el kohen. So she brings us to the entrance of the tent of meeting, which means the sacrificial altar, which is outside, right, which is right in the tent of meeting, to the kohen. Okay. Right. Let's go on to verse 7. And he sacrifices it or brings it close. He oh God, how do they translate here? Offers it. There we go. Better translation. He offers it, meaning the Kohen offers it. He krivo. Okay. He offers it. meaning the bird, right? So the Kohen offers the bird lifnei Yahweh, before Yahweh, v'chiper aleha, and he atones for her, right? He atones for any sin, right? Erases that sin. V'tahara mimkor dameha. So first of all, it says he atones for her, right? He erases any sin that she may have incurred, which again implies, as we already saw from this purification from the sin, or the atonement from sin offering, that there isn't an implication that she might have committed a sin. And almost always when we're talking about these types of sins, we're talking about violation of the laws of purity and impurity, specifically coming in contact with something that is sacred while being in a state of impurity, right? So this would only back that up here. But again, we're going to check the commentaries in a second. And she is purified, or she becomes clean from the source of her blood. Okay, this is a fancy way, or maybe shall we say a graphic or descriptive way of saying that once she brings these two sacrifices, the olah, the burnt offering, and the chatat, the purification from sin offering, or the cleansing from sin offering, then now she goes back to being in a state of cleanliness, of purity. Okay. And then we have a summary verse here. Zot Torah yoledet lezachar or lenikeva, and this is the set of instructions, and notice it uses the word Torah or Torat. And we see once again that the word Torah does not mean the entire Torah. It means set of instructions. And in this case, the set of instructions is for Hayoledet Lezachar Lenekeva, she who gives birth to a boy or a girl. Okay, so first of all, we need to add this. So in both cases, she has to bring a burnt offering and a sin offering. So let's add that. Okay. And maybe we should put that in a separate, let's do it as a separate one. Okay, so we'll do it as 5. So this is going to be in Leviticus 12. One second, where were we? Right, over here. Leviticus 12:6. Leviticus 12:6. 6. Childbirth. So this is going to be giving birth to a boy or girl. Then the purifying action is going to be so we said a lamb. So burnt offering, I'll just put burnt offering, lamb, plus sin offering, bird. Okay, and I should add this here, plus Leviticus 12:6. Let's do it that way. Plus Leviticus 6. Plus Leviticus 12:6. And I think that kind of sums everything up. Okay, so if it's a boy, she waits 7 days. On the 8th day, she circumcises him, or he is circumcised. She waits another 33 days for a total 40 days. Then she goes up and brings an offering, okay, a burnt offering, a lamb for a burnt offering, a bird for sin offering, and then she enters her state of, then she is returned to a state of cleanliness. Same for girl, except doubled, minus the circumcision, of course. Okay, so that's that. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see on the screen. Okay, that is that. Has the double time to do with the girl is born with her eggs, whereas the sperm only comes when the baby boy matures? I don't think so. I don't think it has nothing to do with the baby itself. It has to do with the state that the mother is left in once the baby comes out. It's not the baby that's healing, it's the mother that's healing. So my guess would be that somehow or another, there's some physiological difference to the mother when she gives birth to a girl than when she gives birth to a boy. Because all of the people that say that it's like some kind of attack on girls, they have what they're saying is that spiritually that there was this belief that girls were somehow spiritually impure or unnecessary or unwanted. But this is ridiculous, because everything that causes a person to enter in a state of impurity that we're going to see is based on a physical reality. It's not based on some kind of spiritual reality. It's based on a physical reality. Okay, a woman enters her menstrual cycle, she becomes unclean. Okay, a man touches a dead body, or a woman touches a dead body, they become unclean. A man has some kind of pus coming out of his private part, he becomes unclean. You don't see anywhere else, not that I could think of, within these laws of impurity and purity that something spiritual happens and then a person enters a state of impurity. It's always a physical act attached to it, and so therefore it just is not conceivable that suddenly now there's got to be some kind of understanding, or there must have been some kind of understanding among the ancient Israelites, which if we do believe this is coming from God, he must know something we don't know, or maybe we do know this now, that when a girl is born, that somehow it leaves the internal parts of the mother, it requires more time to heal. I don't know. I don't have any proof for that. If anyone does, please let me know. But it wouldn't make sense any other way, because it's always physical things that causes people to enter into this state of uncleanliness. It's not some spiritual state. It's really based. It's very physical, actually. The whole thing is physical, because the thing that causes one to become unclean is always a physical thing, and the results of being unclean it's not like you're in some kind of like spiritual, purgatory or something like that. No, it's a very physical consequence, which is that you're not allowed to touch the sacred things. You're not allowed to come to the mikdash, right? It's very physical. You're not allowed to come to God's house while you're dirty. It's very logical and very physical. The rabbis, they have really done a number on this to make it cuckoo, to make it like not logical, but it's so logical and it's so straightforward. And especially with these laws of purity and impurity, they've changed them. Okay, maybe the most classic example is the menstrual cycle. So the rabbis always say that at the end of the menstrual cycle, a woman has to go to a mikvah. That's not what the Torah says at all, right? The Torah says that that if it's just a regular menstrual cycle, then after 7 days, the woman automatically becomes pure. She does not have to go to mikvah. It's only when she has what's called a zava, only when she has an irregular flow out of that area, that she has to then go to bathe herself in order to enter a state of purity. So that's just one example of how the rabbis have completely distorted everything. And more than that, one of the explanations for why the Pharisees are called the Pharisees. So Pharisee in Hebrew is Prushi. Prushi means the separate ones. Okay, a Prushi is one who separates himself. And one of the explanations is that they had an obsession with remaining in a state of purity, of ritual, what they would call, what we're calling, what is usually translated as ritual purity, what we're talking about here, cleanliness, right? So they didn't believe you needed to be in a state of cleanliness just to go to the temple. They took it a step farther. They added to the Torah, just the way Dotan and Aviran added to the Torah by bringing that unwanted, that illegal incense. They add to the Torah and they say that one must be in a state of cleanliness, a state of ritual purity, to use the usual translation, all the time, as much as possible, right? And I think, if I remember correctly, from yeshiva days, they would actually, I think there was a statement, something like they would avoid going to the marketplace because there were too many people there or there were too many things there that might bring them in a state of impurity, something like that. They were obsessed with remaining in a state of ritual purity, even though the Torah doesn't it doesn't imply anywhere, at least to my understanding, although I have heard other people bring certain verses that might imply, but I don't think they really do. I don't think the Torah implies anywhere that we need to remain in a state of purity. It does imply that in order to approach the Mikdash, in order to approach God's house, or to touch things that are sanctified, that are consecrated to God, then we must be in a state of purity. Okay? But if we're just going about our regular daily life, there's no commandment anywhere in the Torah that we have to be in a state of purity. But the Prushim, the Pharisees, and again, one of the explanations for the name Pharisee, for the name Prushi, is that they separated themselves from ritual impurity. They were obsessed with remaining in a state of ritual purity all the time, even for their day-to-day tasks. And so therefore they completely distorted, or shall I say, really added to. And remember, adding to the Torah is the same as is taking away from the Torah, because you're not hitting that balance. Okay? The more you add, the more you take away. The analogy I always like to give is, let's say on if someone was playing, if two teams were playing a basketball game, and instead of having I don't watch a lot of basketball. Played a lot of basketball, but I don't watch a lot of basketball. 6 members on a team. All of a sudden, there were like 25 members on a team. Okay, you're adding players to the team, but you're really taking away from the game, because the game is where is hitting the right balance, right? If there are only 2 people per team, that would kind of be boring, and if there are 25 people per team, that would kind of be so chaotic that it would also be boring. It's the balance. So adding is taking away. By the Pharisees adding to the Torah, especially the Prushim, okay, Prushi, the separated ones, the ones who wish to remain separate. Separate from what? Separate from ritual impurity, separate from those people, separating themselves from those people who might be in a state of ritual impurity, even on their day-to-day, even on a day-to-day basis. Then they're adding to the Torah, which means they're taking away from the Torah, or they're distorting the Torah, is a simple way to put it, okay? And we have some good comments here. After birth hormones are off for the days numbered, okay? There's so many reasons to let the mother heal. Absolutely. Oh my God. I mean, after a woman gives childbirth, we know now in this day and age, they send the women back to work like a week later. In the United States, it's insane, right? Or some of them go back the next day, right? They work until they're ready to give birth at their cubicle practically, and then 2 days later with this obsession with money and work, they're already back at work. A woman, after she gives birth, she needs time to just heal. Okay. So, right. Okay, and we'll get to this in a second. Well, let's just sum this up and then we'll go into some commentaries, okay? So, verse 8, V'im lo timsa yada de se ולקחה שתי טורים ושני בני יונה אחד לעולה ואחד לחטאת וכיפר עליה הכהן וטהרה. Okay, so this is now a dispensation. This is now an understanding that not everyone is rich. Not all Jews are rich. Okay, I know that whenever I've met friends from other countries or people from other countries, including Israel, they always assume that all American Jews are like filthy rich, for instance. And knowing a lot of people in the Jewish community back in New York, I know that that's not the case. There's some Jews who live in absolute dire poverty and have to be supported by the community. But there's always this assumption that all Jews are rich. But this verse shows that even back then, not all Jews were bankers and head Hollywood moguls, etc. That there were poor Jews, because this is a dispensation that if velotim sayada de se, so literally this means if her hand cannot looktim sayada, if her hand is not able to find enough or to have enough, that's literal. But the idiom here is, if she doesn't have enough means for a se. Okay, so what's a se? Go back to our list. Animal terms. Se is one of the flock. It's a sheep or goat, but it's really referring to what we saw before, which was a keves, right? Which is a baby lamb. Now it's just using the general term, right? So se is a superset of keves, right? Keves is a subset of se. A lamb is a subset of all sheep and goats. So basically what this is saying. So remember, she had to bring 2 sacrifices. One was a lamb, and then the second was a bird, right? Either a baby pigeon or a turtle dove. And now the Torah is saying, you know what? Maybe not all Jews are rich even back then. So if she can't afford the lamb for that burnt offering, then instead she can substitute a bird. Okay, so she can bring 2 birds instead of a lamb and a bird. Okay, and she has a choice. Again, it could be one of those 2 accepted bird types, either the turtle dove or the baby pigeon. Okay, so we should go back and add that one. And this happens a lot, right? There are a lot of laws in the Torah, especially with regards to the sacrificial system, but not only, where the Torah gives dispensations for people who cannot afford certain laws, right? So this is the common one. If you can't afford such and such mammal, then instead you can bring a bird. If you can't afford a bird, then you can bring a grain offering, okay? But one could even say that if we go back to Leviticus 11 for a second, kashrut, when it speaks about the creepy crawly things, basically the insects, there is another dispensation, and let me just find here. So Leviticus 11:21, so, but these, so the Torah has just told us anything that flies, anything that swarms in the sky, right? So like flies, mosquitoes, this may include even maybe flocks of birds, but I don't think so. I think it's really talking about insects, okay? So flying insects, you're not allowed to eat them, okay? They are shekets. They are considered absolutely vile to you. But verse 21, Leviticus 11:21, but this you may eat from those animals or those insects that swarm in the sky, okay? And here we have a definition, just like we had definitions, let's say, for the mammals. You can eat them if they chew their cud and have split hooves. Here, you can eat them. So first of all, they have to have 4 legs. They walk on 4 legs. It says on 4, but it implies 4 legs. And they have their knees above their legs, okay? To jump upon them, to leap upon them on the land. So you are allowed to eat. You're supposed to completely abhor, consider them as completely vile, but any flying insect that walks on 4 legs and its knees are above its legs and it uses those to jump, like the grasshopper, okay, and it's going to give examples, then those you may eat. Okay, so verse 22, so among these you may eat, and then it gives examples. The arbe is the locust, let me know, according to its type, so this very species of locust. Salam, they translated here as destroying locust. I don't know if anyone really knows what it is. Liminehu, so all different types of destroying locust. The hargol, translated here as cricket, and the hagav, grasshopper, right? So we saw a picture of that last week. Let me bring one up again. Grasshopper learned code. Okay, so here's a classic example. Here we have a grasshopper. We could see that it has 4 legs. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we could see that its knees are above its legs, right? The knees are sticking out up here, and it uses them to jump. Right? That's why it's called a grasshopper, right? Linater means to hop, right? So this is a grasshopper. So this would actually be a kosher insect, okay? And most of the insects that are kosher are, no insect really is appealing to me, but if I had to choose an insect, I'd rather eat a grasshopper, which is kind of majestic and not disgusting, than rather compared to, let's say, a cockroach, right? If you had a plate of grasshoppers and a plate of cockroaches, which one would you rather eat? And I always like to tell the story of when I was a kid, we were always told, I grew up in New York, here's a praying mantis. And you can see it's the same kind of thing, right? Its knees are above its legs. I guess it is 4 legs. I would say there's more than 4. I don't know. I don't know how to count it. At any rate, it's not relevant to the story. We were already always told, I guess this is 1 leg, that's 2 legs. Yeah, that's 4 legs. Okay. We were always told, they just split hooves. That's a joke. At any rate, we were always told growing up that if you killed a praying mantis, there was a $50 fine. And I found out many years later that that was actually an urban legend. It wasn't true, but we were terrified growing up as kids in New York to kill praying mantises because we thought we were going to get, fined by the police if we were caught killing a praying. Not that I ever went around killing praying mantises, but if I ever did have the thought, I wouldn't do it because we were told it was our parents would get fined $50. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is that why would that urban legend even exist? And the reason it would exist is because these praying mantises are considered kind of majestic insects, right? No one's going to charge you $50 for killing a cockroach or a I don't know what would be another example, or a maggot or something like that, right? But these types of insects were considered a bit more majestic. And so if you did have to resort to eating insects, then it would have to be one of these more majestic insects. The point but to get back to the original point, this, in my opinion, and not only my opinion, some of the commentaries, some of the commentaries point out the same thing, that this is a dispensation to say, listen, if a person can't afford to eat mammals and birds, then if they need to resort to eating insects because they don't have the money to eat hamburgers and lamb chops and chicken soup, then these are the types of insects that they can eat. So it's the same idea. It's a dispensation for those who don't have enough money to afford better food, right? You can eat insects if you have no other choice, but these are the insects you eat, right? The more majestic ones. Same thing here. We see this explicitly in Leviticus 12:8, that if someone can't afford the keves, the lamb, then they can substitute it with a bird instead. Okay, so the Torah does has different, I won't call them tiers, but different compromises for when someone cannot afford the more expensive animal. Okay, and we should add this to our list. And then I'll take a break for 2 minutes. Just have to get the charger. So we're doing impurity. So this is Leviticus 12:8. So this is going to be 6. Leviticus 12:8. This is still on the topic of childbirth. This is a boy or a girl. So may substitute bird for burnt offering. Okay. All right. And that's it. That's the end of Leviticus 12. Okay. So any questions, any comments before we move on regarding Leviticus chapter 12? Okay. Why don't we do this? I'm gonna put on some music for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna get the charger for my computer. As I always say, leave the charger elsewhere as an excuse to take a break in the middle of the talk, because I need a rest too. And then we'll come back. We will do what. Yep, you're welcome, Ariel and Ben. Talk to you. We'll come back. We'll do with what? Who was it? Who requested? I can't remember who requested, but I think it was Alpha Omega. Yeah, miscellaneous questions. Let's do a little bit of miscellaneous questions, not for too long, because I do want to finish the Parsha. and then we'll get back into the Parsha. Okay, so I'm going to put on a bit of music, and we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes. Okay? All right.
תשמור על העולם ילד, יש דברים שאסור לראות. תשמור על העולם ילד, אם תראה תפסיק להיות גיבור של העולם ילד, עם חיוך של מלאכים. תשמור על העולם ילד, כי אנחנו כבר לא מצליחים. תשמור על העולם ילד, אל תגזים במחשבות, כי כמה שתדע יותר ילד, אתה רק תבין פחות. ובשעה מסוימת נסגרות כל הדלתות, וכל אהבה נגמרת, רק אתה ממשיך לתהות. תשמור על העולם ילד, יש דברים שאסור לראות. תשמור על העולם ילד, אם תראה תפסיק להיות גיבור של העולם ילד, עם חיוך של מלאכים. תשמור על העולם ילד, כי אנחנו כבר לא מצליחים. גיבור של העולם ילד, עם חיוך של מלאכים. תשמור על העולם ילד, כי אנחנו כבר לא מצליחים.
נתן לך במתנה דבר גדול, דבר נפלא. אלוהים נתן לך במתנה את החיים על פני האדמה. נתן לך את הלילה והיום, אהבה, תקווה וחלום, קיץ, חורף, סתיו, אביב, נשמה טובה להביט סביב. נתן לך שדות ירוקים, פרחים ועצים מלבלבים, נהרות, נחלים וימים, שמיים, ירח, כוכבים.
אלוהים נתן לך במתנה דבר גדול, דבר נפלא. אלוהים נתן לך במתנה את החיים על פני האדמה. נתן לך חגים ושבתות, את ישראל ארץ האבות, ידיים וראש להגשים חלומות. נתן לך את כל הנפלאות, נתן לך דברים כל כך יפים, להביא לעולם ילדים, להאזין לשירים, לראות צבעים. מה רבו מעשיך אלוהים. במתנה דבר גדול, דבר נפלא. אלוהים נתן לך במתנה את החיים על פני האדמה. אלוהים, תן לי רק עוד מתנה, מתנה קטנה אך נפלאה. אלוהים, תן לי רק עוד מתנה, את השלום על פני האדמה.
Okay, we are back. Welcome back to the World Alliance of Qara'im Torah Study. This is Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. So, let me reshare the screen. And so there was a request to do an open question and answer. So we can do that now. So if anybody would like to ask a question, please type it in, or even better yet, come on to the StreamYard link, and then we can actually have a conversation about it. That's a better way to go. But if not, then just type it in, and I will try my best to answer it. Anybody? I think it was Alpha Omega who wanted to do this. I don't know if he's here anymore. So if not, then we'll just move on. All right. Okie doke. So let's move on then, since there's no questions. Okay, so we're going to go on now to Leviticus chapter 13. And now we get into what is usually translated as leprosy, which is a horrible translation. We will talk about the alternate translation in a second. But we're going to again see that pattern, right? Something physical happens that sends somebody into a state of uncleanliness, of dirtiness. When they're in that state of dirtiness, they cannot have contact with any of the sancta, right? That's the fancy word for it. It just means the holy things, the sacred things, meaning they can't touch that which has been dedicated to God, such as food, and they can't approach the mikdash, the holy area, okay? But it's going to be that same pattern. Then there's going to be a certain set of actions that need to be taken in order for one to return from that state of dirtiness to a state of cleanness, state of cleanliness. Okay, and now we're going to see this with this these various diseases. Okay, so we are in Leviticus chapter 13, verse 1. So this time it says that Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, implying that Aaron, in case we didn't know it before, is a prophet, right? Yahweh spoke to Aaron. It doesn't say that Yahweh spoke to Moshe and then Moshe spoke to Aaron. It says that Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron. So Aaron was a prophet. Okay. Verse 2. Adam ki ihye bi'or bisaro s'et on sapahat on bahereth وحياة بأور بسرو لنقع سرعة وهو ال هارون الكهن أو ال حد مي بناو وكهنيم هكهنيم. Okay, so a person, if he should have ki'ye ba'or basaro, in the skin of his flesh, okay? So now there are three things: set, or sapachat, or baheret. So let's get some translations for these, and we'll go to our pal Robert Alter for this one. So this is usually translated as a leprosy. But it's a bad translation. Okay. So he translates it as inflammation or rash or shiny spot. Okay, inflammation or rash or shiny spot. Set or safahat, sapahat or baheret. Okay, let's see, before we analyze that a little bit further, let's see how, well, Milgram is very difficult to go through, and usually Robert Alter quotes Milgram anyway. Well, no, we'll get into a black hole that we'll never get out of. Let's look at Everett Fox. So Everett Fox translates it as a swelling, a scab, or a shiny spot. A swelling, a scab, or a shiny spot. Robert Alter, an inflammation, a rash, or a shiny spot. So already we see, based on, and these are two very good translators, we see based on the fact that there are two different translations that nobody really knows what it means, right? That's what a variety of translations always tells us. Okay? If 10 different translations translate everything the same way, then chances are that implies there's a good idea of what it means. If you check 5 different translations and everyone gives a different translation, then that's right there is a red flag that nobody really knows what it means. And that is absolutely the case. But just for fun, let's check out the NIV, or let's check out maybe a couple of different translations. So Leviticus 13, we will go to parallel. 13:2. So the NIV renders it as swelling, a rash, or a shiny spot. NLV, swelling, rash, or discolored skin, swelling, or an eruption, or a spot. Let's get down a little bit. I don't know. Let's check out the JPS. Where'd the JPS go? JPS 1917. Arising, a scab, or a bright spot, and on and on. Okay, so, but something is wrong on the skin, right? So Beheret is maybe one of the clearest ones, right? So the underlying root Bahar means brightness or light. So that would be a shiny spot, right? Or yeah, Robert Alter does shiny spot, so we'll go with that. I can close this out now. The second one before the sapachat, so that comes from the underlying root for sapachat is samach pe het, and which means an addition or something that's like above and beyond, right? So, for instance, in modern Hebrew, if you have an addendum, that's called a sefach, right, or an attachment, that might be called a sefach. Okay, it comes from that same root. So usually this is understood as, they'll call it, a lot of times they'll translate it as a scab, because it's like added to the skin, right? So again, Robert Alter, what does he do with that one? He calls it a rash. Okay, and maybe he'll explain himself. And then the first one is sa'et. So sa'et also, that comes from the underlying root nasa nun samech aleph. The nun drops out. It's one of those letters that often drops out, such as the hey, the yud, the taf, the nun. They all drop out. Sometimes the aleph. And so a seit also is like something risen up, right? Laseit means to carry. So something that's risen up, something that's added, or something that's bright. That's as much of a literal translation as I can come up with here. Okay, so a risen up thing, an added thing, or a bright thing. Okay, so how does Robert Alter deal with each one of those? So the risen up thing he calls an inflammation, the added thing he calls a rash, and the bright things he calls a shiny spot. Everett Fox, the risen up thing he calls a swelling. That makes more sense. The added things he calls a scab. That makes more sense, right? Because a scab is like added on top of the skin. And then the Baheret he calls a shiny spot. Okay? So let's get a little commentary on that one. So that's verse 2. So he's going to explain where he comes up with the translations. So we're here throughout this long section on dermatological disorders. The precise definition of disease and even symptoms remains uncertain. And the approximations afforded by translation are chiefly guided by etymology, right? That's what we said. Inflammation, for example, represents the Hebrew et, which appears to exhibit the verbal root that means to raise, right? Or to carry, like we said. Okay, shiny spot is proposed for Beheret because the verbal stem on which that noun is formed means to shine or to be bright. The fact of the matter is that the ancients perceived and described diseases and their symptoms differently than does Western medicine. And some conditions that they understood to be a single malady may actually have been a variety of diseases, not all of them intrinsically related. Scholarly attempts to equate the various conditions reported here with specific dermatological disorders have had only limited success. A certain lack of specificity in the translation of the quasi-medical language of the section seems prudent and indeed appropriate. Okay, so that's his explanation, right? So he did basically what we did, tried to analyze the underlying roots, seit from laseit or noseh, which means to lift up, to raise up, okay, to rise up. Safachat, which means to add to, from safach, to add to, and baheret, bahar, means to be bright, okay? All right, so that's that. If we really wanted to, I guess we could check out, well, let's look at Ibn Ezra very quickly. So that's Leviticus 13. Hello. Try that one again. Website can't be reached. That's nice. I don't know what's going on. All right, let me try that again. All right, let's go back to the regular Wi-Fi. Earth to Wi-Fi, come in Wi-Fi. Okay, I think I'm back. This Leviticus 3rd. 1 or 2. Verse 2. What? Dumb, okay. So he doesn't actually, the Ibn Ezra doesn't comment on it at all. Okay, so he makes a point about why it says a dam, but I don't want to get into that right now. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, we have 10 definitions for these conditions. Okay. So any of those three things, and there is on the skin of his flesh, l'nega sara'at. Okay, so here we go. So a plague or how do I translate here? Okay, a sore, but I don't like the translation. Let's see, Robert Alter deals with that one. Affliction is better. Okay. As leprosy, he translates it as skin blanch. Okay. So this word here, tzara'at, is usually translated as leprosy. Robert Alter is translating it as skin blanch. Let's see what Ibn Ezra does with that one. No, nothing. He doesn't relate to it. Let's see what Everett Fox does with that one. He doesn't translate it at all. He transliterates it as tzara'at. So he avoids the whole problem just by transliterating it rather than translating it. Okay. Let's go to, I don't know. Let's try one of our new commentaries. How about this feller over here? Come on. Oh, gotta do this. One second, please. All right, so I think it's better if we do it that way. So Leviticus 11. Oops, I think we zoomed right past it. Let's bring this back up here. I think the internet is acting funky again. Let me see if I can go back onto the other internet. 1 second, please. Nope, I'm not even getting the other internet. 1 second. All right. 1 second, please. Let's see if we can get on another internet. Let's see if it works better. Commentary. 12.2. 13.2. Okay. So let me grab this for a second here. So this is the heck is it called again? The cultural backgrounds, Torah or something like that, or Bible. And it's supposed to give us a kind of a cultural insight. So we're going to start here, 13.2. Okay, a defiling skin disease. A more descriptive rendering is a scaly skin disease. And that's, again, he's talking about this word sara'at, which is often translated as scale, or is usually, for those who are trying to do a better translation, they'll translate it as scale disease, and we'll talk about why in just a second, okay? But let's just read to the end. Okay, here the issue regarding a scaly with lesions skin disease is not infection contagion in the sense that it would make other people physically sick. Rather, the concern is with protection of the sphere of holiness centered at the sanctuary from defilement by ritual impurity. He's absolutely right about this, okay? The maladies lumped in chapters 13 to 14 under the heading of scale disease, and that's, again, the Hebrew word is sara'at. In the traditional translations, translated as leprosy, but there's no evidence for it actually being anything like leprosy. And the better translations will call it scale disease for reasons we'll explain in just a second. Okay, so cannot simply be equated with the modern leprosy, right? E.I. Hansen's disease. The Hebrew term applies to a complex of conditions, including some that resemble psoriasis and vitiligo, just as Hippocrates used Greek lepra for several skin diseases in Leviticus. In Leviticus, scale disease is not restricted to just human beings, but could also affect a house. In some instances, white discoloration of skin or hair could be a factor, among others, that was symptomatic of the impure affliction. For a similar dim view of white discolorations, compare Mesopotamian omens. Hansen's disease, again, leprosy, was little known in the ancient Near East prior to the time of Alexander, though there is one Assyrian medical text that describes symptoms that may well be Hansen's disease. Okay. Just want to make sure that's coming up. Yes, it is. Okay. So we can move on to the next page. Oops, I gotta get rid of this. Goodbye. And I think that's the end of his commentary for there. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so scale disease, right? We're going to go with scale disease, and we'll see why in a second. So Robert Alter translates it as skin blanch. Will he explain himself? Let's see. Well, he's not explaining it right now. Okay. At any rate, when he has this thing called tzara'at, okay, which we're gonna go with scale disease, right? So when he gets this scale disease, this tzara'at, maybe I'll just call it tzara'at. V'huva el Aharon HaKohen, so he's brought to the Aaron the Kohen, or el echad mibanav HaKohanim, or to one of his sons. At this point, he only has 2 sons left, right? Remember, Nadav and Avihu are gone. And all we have left is Eleazar and Itamar. Okay, so when he has this scale disease, he's brought to the Kohanim. They're the ones responsible for dealing with all these issues of purity and impurity for obvious reasons, because they're in charge of the sacred areas, the sacred things. Okay, Verse 3, وَرَآ هَكُهَن et hanera. So the Kohen shall take a look at the affliction, be'or habasar, in the skin of his flesh, وَسَيْعَرْ بَنَegah وَسَيْعَرْ بَنَegah hafach levan, u'mar'eh hanera amok me'or bisaro nera sara'at hu we'ra'ahu hakohen watime oto. Okay, so he takes a look at it. V'se'ar b'nega hafach levan. So if the hair within the affliction, within the afflicted area, has turned white, okay, u'mar'eh hanega amok me'or, and the appearance of the affliction is deeper than the skin. Okay, I guess meaning like an indentation. Again, all of it is speculation. Okay, me'or basro. Let's see how Robert Alter deals with that one. So that's verse 3. And the affliction seems deeper than the skin of his body. So it means like it's penetrating into like the deeper layers of the skin. Right? It's not just something on the surface. It looks like a lesion, or like a tumor or something like that, right? So the hair is turned white, and this affliction looks like it goes deep into the flesh. Nega tzara'at. It is the affliction of tzara'at, of scale disease. Okay. V'ra'u kohen, and if the Kohen sees this, v'timei oto, he shall declare him unclean. Shall declare him dirty. Okay. So tzara'at. So let's go back to our list here. So now we'll call this law 7. We are in Leviticus. We are in Leviticus 13:3, I'll call it. Category is, I don't know what to say. We'll call it scale disease. Okay. So the impurifying action is that let's go with Robert Alter's definition. Everett Fox, that a swelling, scab, or shiny spot. I'll just copy paste this. Oops. So swelling, scab, shiny spot turns into scale disease. Say turns into scale disease with white hair and turns, how do I want to word this? Swelling, scab, or shiny spot turns into wound, tumor, blemish with white hair turns into deep blemish with white hair. Scale disease. Okay, so that's the impurifying action, or the impurifying thingy. That's the technical word, thingy. All right, let me just go ahead this for a second. Everything, format, wrapping, wrap. Okay, whoa. Don't want that. Okay, I can. This format. wrapping, overflow. Okay. So a swelling scab or shiny spot turns into deep blemish with white hair, scale disease. Okay, that's that. Then he's declared impure. Okay? Verse 4. V'im baheret livonahi ba'or besaro. And if there is a bright white spot in the flesh of his skin, yamok en mareha mina or ora lo hafach lavan wiskir kohen et hanega shiv'at yamim. So, all right. So now, just one second. Okay. So, so I think this, okay. Right. So if one of these things happens, right? The, what are we calling it? The swelling scab or shiny spot. One second. Okay, so if one of these things happens and it looks like it's going to develop into the scale disease, then he's brought to the Kohanim. The Kohanim takes a look at it. If there's white hair and the blemish looks deeper than the skin, then it's declared scale disease and he's impurified. However, if you have one of these three things, the seit or the safachat or the baheret, the swelling scab or shiny spot, then and he's brought to the Kohen, and the baheret hiba or besaro, v'amok en mareha mina or besara lo afach lavan liskir Kohen et hanega shivat yamim. So if, just want to see one thing. So it's baheret. So if he has, well, it says specifically baheret, but I think it means one of these three things. If there's one of these three things, and he's brought to the Kohen, but the hair is not white, and the blemish does not look like it goes deeper than the skin, then what happens? Then he is he's quarantined. The Kohen quarantines him for 7 days, right? Because maybe it's going to develop into scale disease, maybe it's not. If it doesn't, then he'll be released ultimately, and if it does, he'll be declared as unclean. Okay. So that really, okay. So I don't know how to put this on the list because it's not an impurifying action, right? He's just basically quarantined for 7 days. So maybe I'll put that as a comment, okay? If there back here. Okay, if there is no deep blemish and white hair, then he is put into quarantine for 7 days. Okay, so the initial thing that makes him be brought to the Kohen is the swelling scab or shiny spot. Okay, he's brought to the Kohen, and then the Kohen checks: is there a deep blemish with white hair? If so, bingo, we have leprosy. Bad translation. We have scale disease. And let me do this as well. Format, wrapping, wrap. Bring this back. Okay. But if he goes there and there's no, one more thing. If there's no deep blemish and no white hair, then he's put into quarantine for 7 days. Okay, let's move on. Verse 5. ורآהו הכהן ביום השביעי, והנה הנגע עמד בעינו, לא פסע הנגע בעור, והזכירו הכהן 7 ימים שנית. And I should say this is Leviticus 13:4. I'll just say verse 4. Verse 4. Okay. So then after the 7 days, what happens? So if it's still in the same state, in other words, these things, these initial symptoms, right? The initial symptoms, the swelling, scab, or shiny spot are still there, but they haven't gone away, but it still hasn't developed into tzara'at, into scale disease. In other words, there's no white hair and it hasn't gotten any deeper, but it hasn't cleared up either. Then he keeps them for another 7 days. Okay. If it hasn't cleared up, then he is put into quarantine for another 7 days, and that is verse 5. Okay, just maybe say, we'll see 13:4 and 13:5. Okay, fine. Okay, so verse 6, וראה הכהן אותו ביום השביעי שנית, והנה כהה הנגע ולא פסע הנגע בעור, וטיהרו הכהן מספחת he וכיבס בגדיו וטהר. Okay, so after the 14 days, then wahine keha naga. So remember, it was baheret, right? His skin was bright. Now kehe means to become dim or dark. So if it's gotten darker, velo pasa, and it is not spread out, v'tiaro kohen, then the kohen declares him pure. Okay, misafachat, from safachat in this case would be this one over here, which we're translating as scab. Okay, but like scale disease, they're going to translate it as here. How do they do it? Mispachati. I'm sorry. It's only a scab. Okay. So if after that 14th week it's already clearing up, that 14th day it's already clearing up, then he has to bathe, he has to wash his clothes, and then he becomes clean. Okay, so let's see how we can. Okay, swelling, scab, or shiny spot turns into deep blemish with white scale disease. Okay, maybe we should put this separately. One second. Let me see how to organize this. Okay. Can you please get her out of here? Okay. So let's see how we're going to organize this. I'm trying to think how to best logically organize this. Okay. So, All right, swelling. Maybe keep this one separately. No, maybe I'll put this all in the footnotes. No, I'll put this differently. Okay, Leviticus. Let's put it over here. So Leviticus, this is 13:6. So Leviticus 13:6. Category is scale disease. We'll say after 14 days, the bright spot has begun to clear up. Return to normal. Normal. This is 8. Then the consequence is he has to wash his clothes. Wash clothes, and then he's declared clean. Okay, I think that's a good way to summarize it. Okay, good. Okay, a little bit technical, a little bit complex. From the CDC, yes. All right, any questions, any comments? All right, now let's go on. So then we have ואם פסע תפסה המשפחת באור אחרי הרותו אל הכהן לטהרתו ונראה שנית אל הכהן וראה הכהן והנה פסתה המשפחת באור וטמאו הכהן צרת היא. Okay, so ואם פסע תפסה המשפחת. Okay, so we have two chances. Wait 1 second. Let me just try to get this in context here. הכהן את הנגע, באור הבשר ונגע הפך לבן, אוקיי, וטימא אותו. ואם בהרת לבנה היא באור ושרוף את הצרה לבן, הזכיר הכהן את הנגע 7 ימים, וראהו הכהן ביום השביעי, והנה הנגע עמד בעיניו, לא פסע הנגע באור, והזכירו הכהן 7 ימים, וראה הכהן אותו ביום השביעי שנית, והנה כהה הנגע ולא פסע הנגע באור, ותראו הכהן משפחת היא כס בגדיו טהר, ואם פסע תפסה המשפחת באור אחרי הרתו אל הכהן לטהרתו, ונראה שנית אל הכהן, וראה הכהן והנה. Okay, so I think this is saying here. So I think what this is saying here is these two verses. So I'll translate it a word for word. Ve'im pasa tifseh hamispachat. So if the mispachat, the scab, has clearly spread ba'or on his skin, acharei heroto el kohen, after he showed it to the kohen letarato to be declared clean, v'nirah shenit el kohen, then it is shown a second time to the kohen. So I think this is saying that after the first 7 days, it's spread out. Then again, it's shown a second time to the Kohen. I think that means another 7 days he's put in quarantine to wait. And the Kohen shall look at it. And if the scab has spread out on the skin, and then the Kohen declares him unclean, and it is scale disease. So if I understand this correctly, here we have a situation where he comes back after 7 days and it has spread, but he doesn't declare it yet as tzara, a scale disease. He waits another 7 days, and at that time, if it has continued to spread even more, then it's declared scale disease. That's the way I'm understanding this. So I'm going to put that down, and then we can maybe look at some of the commentaries. Okay, so we are talking about now, this is Leviticus 13:8. So this is law, we're calling it law 9. Leviticus 13:8. Scale disease. Okay. After 7 days, it has spread. If it is spread, he is checked, or it is checked after another 7 days. And if it has continued spread, then and it continues to spread. Okay. Going there. Okay. Right. So after 7 days, it has spread. And okay, then it is checked after another 7 days, and it continues to spread. Okay, fine. Then he's declared impure. So this is actually not, oh yeah, right, that was an impurifying action. And he washed his clothes here, okay. Okay, I'll have to figure out how to organize this another time. It's a little bit difficult to organize. Maybe we need a flow chart or something like that. Let's move on. All right. Verse 9. Now we're waiting. Verse 9. So, nega sora'at ki ti'eh be'adam וhuvah el kohen. One second. וראה הכהן והיא נישאת לבנה באור והיא הפכה שיער לבן ומחיית בשר חי בשאת צרעת נושנת היא באור בשרו וטמאו הכהן לא יסגרנו כי טמא הוא ואם פרוח תפרח הצרת באור וכיסתה הצרת את כל אור הנגע מראשו ועד רגליו נכון מראהו אין כהן. Okay, so this is going to be pretty technical as well. So just bear with me here. Okay. So, you know what? Let's get a little bit more commentary on these verses 1 through 7, because this kind of ends that. We have a peh here, which means Parsha Petucha. That means basically the end of a chapter in the Hebrew text. Okay. Let's just get a little bit of commentary just to sum everything up here. All right. So, we have on verse 3. Okay, I'm busy right now. Okay, so verse 3 was, and the priest. Don't let him growl. Okay, don't hold him. I've told you a million times, don't restrain him. Excuse me. I've told you a million times. All right, he wants to go. Okay, not hold. Okay, go. Let him go. Okay, I'm in the middle of something disturbing you. All right, go. All right. So we're talking about verse 3. Okay. So, and the priest shall see the affliction on the skin of his body, and if the hair in the affliction is turned white, and the affliction seems deeper than the skin of his body, it is skin blanch. That's what he's calling scale disease. He calls it skin blanch. When the priest sees it, he shall declare him unclean. So what does Robert Alter say about this one? In most of the recurrences here, the verb see has the obvious force of examine, but there's still another instance in which an ordinary all-purpose term is enlisted for technical use, a stylistic practice this translation emulates. Okay, fine. Skin blanch. Although older translations represent the Hebrew tzarat etymology uncertain as leprosy, modern scholars are virtually unanimous in rejecting this identification. Oops. Okay, the symptoms do not correspond, and there is scant evidence that leprosy was present in the Near East before the Hellenistic period. No positive identification with a disease known to modern medicine has been made. In most biblical occurrences, tzarat is associated with a ghastly white loss of pigmentation, and hence this translation adopts the coined term skin blanch. So that's how he translates it, okay? See the comment on Exodus 4:6. Loss of pigmentation in hair and skin is prominent here as a determining symptom. Okay? When the priest sees it, he shall declare him unclean. The examiner priest determines the diagnosis, and perhaps one should think of him as performing at least one function of a physician. But these regulations for skin conditions reflect an ambiguous conception of disease that wavers between pathology and ritual impurity, the general sense of tameh, unclean. Thus, the quarantining of the afflicted person might involve the fear of contagion in the medical sense, or might be chiefly an avoidance of ritual contamination. And one suspects that the two were blurred in the Israelite imagination. Maybe Jacob Milgram proposes, and we said Jacob Milgram is one of the leading experts on the book of Leviticus, or on the sacrificial system, or the cultic worship of Yahweh. Jacob Milgram proposes that the wasting of the flesh involved in tzarat is associated with death, and that these laws are an expression of the impulse in Leviticus to separate all death-like phenomena from the living. Okay, irrelevant to us right now. And then this already takes us up to verse 11. Okay, so getting back to where we were, so we're done with 1 through 7. So just to sum up, 1 through 7, quite technical. Okay, so we see these initial symptoms, the safachat or baheret, the swelling, scab, or shiny spot, and then it might turn into tzarat. So he's brought to the Kohen. The Kohen takes a look at it, and if he sees that there's white hair and the blemish looks deeper than the skin, then it's declared as tzarat, which Robert Alter is translating as skin blanch. So let's go with skin blanch. Okay. So it's declared skin blanch, and he's declared unclean. That's basically the first flow. Okay. If the Kohen takes a look at it, and yes, the skin is white. In other words, there's a baheret. Okay. Or maybe any of these things, I think, by extension. But if he takes a look at it, but the blemish is not deeper than the skin, and there's no white hair in it, then he's quarantined for 7 days. At the end of the 7 days, if it's still the same, it hasn't gotten better, and it hasn't gotten any worse, then he's quarantined for another 7 days. Okay, that's over here. And at the end of the second 7 days, if it's starting to clear up, become darker, because it was a bright spot, and it hasn't spread out, then he's declared pure, basically sent home, and the ordeal is done, but he first has to wash his clothing, and then returns to a state of cleanliness. Okay? But if after 7 days it has spread out, one second, ואם פסק תפסה מספחת באור אחרי הרותו אל הכהן לטהרתו, ונראה שנית אל הכהן. So I think this is what this is saying. If after the 7 days it has spread out, then ונראה שנית, he's shown again, it's shown again to the Kohen, meaning I think another 7 days, although the language here is a bit confusing. But Ra'al Kohen, and so after that second 7 days, if it has continued to spread out, then it's declared tzaraat and he's declared impure. Okay? That sums up basically 1 through 7. So it's a bit, we need almost like a flow chart or something like that. Right. We also have the case where Moses, when he has the signs that he's to bring to Pharaoh, one of them is he reaches his hand in and it comes out mitzorat, right? His hand comes out leprous. And actually we could find that for 1 second. So that's Exodus 4:6. So it says, V'yomer Yahweh lo, so Yahweh said to him, to Moses, Od havena yadcha bechekecha, place your hand into your breast, okay, into your robe, in your breast there, v'yaveh yado becheko, and he placed his hand into his breast, v'yotzi'ah, and he took it out, v'hine yado mitzorat kashaleg, and behold, his hand was mitzorat, was leprous, which is the bad translation, but it had tzaraat kasheleg, like snow, right? So that again implies that this tzaraat, right, which Robert Alter, I think, is a great translation, is translating as skin blanch. So the skin blanch, his hand was as white as snow, okay, was skin blanched like snow, right? So whatever it is, we see again and again that this tzaraat, the skin blanch, is associated with white skin, right? In this case, with white hair. In this case, baheret, with bright skin, which is very similar, right? This is some kind of whitening of the skin and the hair. Okay, let's go on. Verse 9. So if it turns out that a person does have tzaraat, then he's brought to the Kohen. And let me just see something. So I guess in this case, so now it says, literally it says, Adam Kohen. So if a person should have the affliction of, what are we calling it again? Of skin blanch, right? But I don't think it means if he has it. I think if he's suspected of having it. So I'm going to go with if he's suspected of having this condition of skin blanch, and then he's brought to the Kohen. Verse 10. And the Kohen takes a look at it. There is a set we're translating as a swelling. So there's a white swelling in the skin. And it is turned into white hair, literally, but it means white hair is formed within it. Okay. Basar hai baset literally means live flesh is dwelling or living in the inflammation, in the swelling. So let's get a translation on that one. That's verse 10. Exposed flesh. That's how okay, got it. Michyat basar, so literally means living flesh, or the life of flesh living within the inflammation, right? So I guess, okay, so Robert Alter's translating that as exposed flesh. Everett Fox translates that as with a live patch of live flesh. So he does it a little bit more literally. A live patch of live flesh in the swelling. Okay? So Michyat basar means, so he's translating Michyat. Michyat also comes from the underlying root chai, so it means like a living thing, right? So he's calling it live flesh, or he's calling it a patch of live flesh. That's Michyat basar, living in the inflammation, right? So, okay, Robert Alter is dealing with that one by saying exposed skin. So in that case, tzarat noshenet. So noshenet means, it comes from the word yashan, which means old, okay? And that, I guess, would mean kind of ongoing or maybe chronic. Robert Alter deals with that one, verse 11, chronic, right? So this is now not just tzarat, this is chronic tzarat. So this is chronic skin blanch. Okay, so this is like a more serious type. It's chronic skin blanch, right? The symptoms are worse than the original. So then he's declared impure. Lo yiskereni kitamehu, and there's no need to quarantine him for 7 or 14 days because it's declared right on the spot that it's skin blanch. It's tzara'at. Okay, so let's try to write that one up. All right. Nega tzarat ki ti'eh ba'adam v'huva el kohen v'ra'a kohen v'hine set levana ba'or. Okay, so what is the symptoms? There is a white inflammation in the skin. So white inflammation in the skin, or let's just say white inflammation, because where else is it going to be? White inflammation. White inflammation, white hair, in which there is white hair and exposed flesh. Okay? White inflammation in which there is white hair and exposed flesh. Don't you miss the days of the stories about Abraham and Isaac? It was also easy back then, right? Now we get into all this technical stuff, but we'll try to do the best we can here. Okay. All righty. So, right. And this is Law 10. Leviticus, this is Leviticus 13:10, we'll call it. Scale disease, so that's what makes him unclean, and we haven't gotten to what makes him clean yet. I mean, all of this is going to need a little bit of reorganization, but we'll do the best we can. Okay. So this is chronic scale disease, actually. So the category is chronic scale disease. How do we want to represent that? All right, we'll do it right here. We'll call it chronic scale disease or scale disease. Okay, good enough. Okay, verse 12. V'im paroach tifrach hatzorat ba'or v'kista hatzorat et kol or hanega merosho v'ad raglau l'chol mare einei hakohen. So literally, if the tzarat, if the skin blanch Paroach tifrach, it means like blossoms, blooms, like spreads out, right? In the skin. So if it blossoms in the skin, v'kistat tzarat kol or hanega, and the skin blanch covers all of the skin of the afflicted area, meroshova ad raglav, from his head to his feet, the chol mareh enei hakohen, everywhere the Kohen looks, literally for all of the looking or the appearance of the eyes of the Kohen. So basically, I think this is saying that if now the tzaraat, the skin blanch, covers his entire body. Okay, let's get a translation. And if the skin blanch, in fact, erupts in the skin, and the skin blanch covers all the skin of the person with the affliction from head to toe, wherever the priest's eyes can see. Okay, so this is a worst case. Verse 13. We ra'a hakohen wahine kista hatzara'at et kol bisaro watihar et hanaga kulo hafach lavan tahor hu. Okay, so this is an interesting one. So literally it says, so if the Kohen sees this, v'hine kista tzarat et kol bisaro, and behold, the skin blanch has covered et kol bisaro, his entire flesh, meaning his entire body, watihar et hanega kulo. Watihar et hanaga kulo fach lavan tahorhu. So actually, he's declared pure at that point. Why? Well, I'm gonna have to think about that one. But now this skin blanch covers his entire body. He's actually declared pure. Right? Verse 13. The priest shall see and look, if the skin blanch has covered his whole body, he shall declare the affliction clean. It is turned white, it is clean. So we'll have to get a little bit of commentary on that one, right? I would almost assume that my explanation would be, so basically it's saying if the tzarat is localized, if the skin blanch is localized, then he's declared impure, right? Tamehu. Okay. However, if the skin blanch now spreads out and covers his entire body, then he's declared clean, pure. Okay, tahorhu. Why is this? It seems to me that I don't know what Robert also is going to say, but I have a feeling what he's going to say is that if it covers the whole body, it's determined that it's not tzaraat, it's not skin blanch, it's maybe some other disease, right? Some other disease that makes all of the skin bright or white, but shall we call it Michael Jackson disease or something like that? But it's not tzaraat. Okay, it's something else, and therefore he's declared pure. Let's see what Robert Alter says about that one. So this is verse 13. Okay, so he says the referent to the second clause might be either the affliction, nega, or the person, in which case it should be translated as he is clean. This criterion for being cured is a little confusing, right? Because white has been associated with the disease, compare the preceding clause, the skin blanch has covered his whole body. Here, however, as Baruch Levine explains, the whiteness is indication of fresh skin that has grown instead of exposed flesh, as in the next verse. Okay. All right. So how do we mark that here? So it's not an impurifying action. That's actually so let's mark it here. If one second. So if the skin blanch has covered his entire body, then he's declared clean. I don't know why. It doesn't make that explanation that we just read doesn't make sense, but okay, we'll just put it down. If the skin, I think it's because it's declared, it's thought of as another disease. If the skin blanch covers his entire body, then he is declared. And that is going to be and that is Leviticus, that was 13, right? It's really 12. Okay, so it's Leviticus 13:12. Okay, God, this is very technical. I might give up. I'm getting tired. All right, maybe we'll go to the end of this paragraph and then I'll just read through. I think we've had enough, right? I think this is just a bit too technical. All right. Okay, so that's, now let's go to verse 14. Ubiyom herotob bo basar hayitma. So if on the day he looks at it, meaning if the Kohen looks at it, basar hay, it's exposed skin, according to Robert Alter's translation, yitma, then he's declared impure. V'ra'a Kohen et habasar hay, watim'o habasar hay, tameu tzaratu. Let me just read this again. Nega tzarat ki ti'eh b'adam, yuva el Kohen. וראה כהן והנה סט לבנה באור והיא הפכה שיער לבן ומחיית בשר חי בסט. צרת נושנת היא באור בשרו ותמאו הכהן לא יסגרנו כי טמא הוא. ואם פרוך תפרח הצרעת, one second, תהיה באדם והובא לכהן וראה הכהן והנה סט לבנה באור והיא הפכה שיער לבן ומחיית, אוקיי, וצרת נושנת היא באור בשרו ותמאו הכהן ולא יסגרנו כי טמא הוא. ואם פרוך תפרח הצרעת אור וכיסתה הצרעת את כל אור הנגע מראשו ועד הרגליו לכל מראה עיני הכהן, וראה הכהן והנה כיסתה הצרעת את כל בשרו וטיהר את הנגע כולו, הפך לבן טהור הוא. וביום הרות בו בשר חי יטמא. וראה הכהן את הבשר החי וטמאו הבשר החי, טמא הוא צרת הוא. או כי ישוב הבשר החי ונהפך ללבן, ובא לכהן וראהו הכהן והנה נהפך הנגע ללבן, וטיהר הכהן את הנגע טהור הוא. All right, we're just going to go through this paragraph, try to make some sense out of it, and then I'm going to end. I can't take it. It's very technical. All right, let's run through it again. I'm going to run through it until it makes sense, and then we're going to stop after this paragraph. And then what I think I'll do, I'll just read, I'll do the express study, as I like to call it. We'll just run through the verses, and I'll just comment on what needs to be commented on. Okay. נגע צרת כי תהיה באדם והובא אל הכהן. One second here. I want to just get a little context for myself. והיה באור בשרו נגע צרת והובא אל הכהן והכהן אל אחד בינם וראה הכהן את הנגע באור בשר ושיער ונגע הפך לבן ומראה ונגע עמוק באור בשרו נגע צרת הוא ראה הכהן וטימא אותו. אם בהרת לבנה היא באור בשרו ועמוק אין מראה ואין האור ושערה לא הפך לבן והזכיר הכהן את הנגע שבעת ימים וראהו הכהן ביום השביעי והנה הנגע עמד בעיניו ולא פסע הנגע באור, הזכירו הכהן 7 ימים שנית וראה הכהן אותו ביום השביעי שנית והנה כהה הנגע ולא פסע הנגע באור והתיארו הכהן מספחת והיא וכיבס בגדיו וטהר. ואם פסת תפסה משפחת באור אחרי הרתו הכהן לטהרתו ונראה השנית אל הכהן וראה הכהן והנה פסתה המשפחת באור וטימא הכהן צרעת היא. או הכהן צרעת היא. Okay. נגע צרת כי תהיה באדם והובא אל הכהן וראה הכהן והנה שאת לבנה באור והיא הפכה שיער לבן ומחיית בשר חי בשאת צרת נושנת היא באור בשרו תמאו הכהן לא יסגירנו כי טמא הוא ואם פרוח תפרח הצרת באור וכיסתה הצרת כל אור הנגע מראשו ועד רגליו וכל מראה עיני הכהן וראה הכהן והנה כיסתה הצרת את כל בשרו וטיהר את הנגע כולו הפך לבן טהור הוא. וביום הרות בו בשר חי יטמא וראה הכהן את הבשר החי וטמאו הבשר החי טמא הוא צרת הוא או כי ישוב הבשר חי ונהפך ללבן ובא אל הכהן וראה הכהן והנה נהפך נגע ללבן טיהר וטיהר הכהן את הנגע טהור הוא. So maybe one second. Yeah, I think maybe this verse. One second. כל אור הנגע. I don't know. It's confusing. I have to be honest. Oh, God. I'm going to have to read this over by myself, I think, and make some sense out of it. It's very confusing. One way to understand it is that this is saying, so if we translate this literally, this says the affliction of skin blanch. If the affliction of skin blanch should be upon a person, then he is brought to the Kohen. But the verb ti'eh, which means will be or shall be or would be, might imply, because this imperfect or this future tense applies a number of different moods, and it actually one possible way to translate it might be if the affliction of tzara'at, of skin blanch, is suspected of being upon a person, then he's brought to the Kohen. So if we do that reading, if the affliction of tzara'at is suspected of being in a person, then he's brought to the Kohen. Verse 10, and the Kohen takes a look at him, or it. And behold, there is a white inflammation, ba'or, in the skin, and the hair within it has turned white, and an exposed skin is living within the inflammation. Then tzarat noshenetu, then it is indeed chronic tzarat, or basaro, in the skin of his flesh. Bitimo kohen, and the Kohen declares him unclean. Lo yaskirenu kitamehu. There's no need to quarantine him because he is unclean. V'im paroch tifrach tzarat, but if that which is suspected of being tzara'at spreads out, ba'or, spreads out in the entire skin, or in the skin, v'kista tzara'at et kol or hanega, and that which is suspected of being tzara'at covers the entire flesh of the afflicted person, meroshod va'ad raglav, from his head to his feet, l'chol marei enei hakohen, everywhere the Kohen should look. And the Kohen examines it and sees that that which is suspected of being tzarat is covered, all of his flesh, v'tihar et hanega, that then he declares the afflicted person clean, or the affliction clean, kulo afach lavan tahoru, because the entire thing, meaning the entire person has turned white, so he's declared clean. In other words, that's contrasted to the plate to if there's exposed flesh. Ubiyom herot bo basar chayit ma. But if he looks at it, but if on the day he looks at it, there is exposed flesh, then he's declared unclean. And the Kohen examines the exposed flesh and he declares the exposed flesh impure. And the person is declared impure or unclean. It is indeed tzara'at. Or if the exposed flesh returns and it turns white, uvayla kohen, and then he's brought back to the kohen. He's brought to the kohen. But the kohen looks at it, and it determines that the skin has that the affliction has turned white. Then the kohen declares it clean, and the person is declared clean. So I think the issue here is the exposed flesh. Right? Basically, if there's exposed flesh, then he's declared impure. And if there's not exposed flesh, but the entire body turns white, then it's not tzarat noshenet. It's not chronic tzarat, and he's actually declared pure. So I think, to sum up, I think what's going on here is that this really is best understood as suspected of having tzarat, or maybe having tzarat, but it's not the same. It's not skin blanch that has exposed flesh, so it's okay. Anywho, I've had enough. I'm tired. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through the rest of the parsha, and and then we're going to finish off. Okay? I think we get the idea that this is all extremely technical stuff. It requires really a lot of research, and nobody really knows. There's a lot of speculation. But what's clear here is that the issue is whether there's exposed flesh or not. What's clear here in these verses is whether there's white hair and a blemish that goes deeper than the skin. That's so that's the defining issue in verses 1-7. Is there white hair and a blemish which goes deeper than the skin? Okay, if so, he's declared impure. In these verses here, the defining issue is there exposed flesh? If there's exposed flesh, he's declared impure. If there's not, then he's declared pure or clean. Okay? Now we have another peh here. Tucha, that means the end of a chapter in the Hebrew text, and now we go on to something else. Ubasar ki yebo bi'oro shachin v'nirpa. Bi'oro shachin. So what is shachin? So shachin is usually translated as boils. It's one of the 10 plagues. Okay? So let's just go through this, and I'm not going to try to analyze it. This would require hours and hours and hours, and we'd really have to research it. Shabbat Shalom, Reuven, Aviva Skari. Okay. Ubasar ki yebo be'oro shachin v'nirpa. So, if in a person's flesh there is in his skin a boil, and he is cured of it, and it is healed. Verse 19. And if there shall be in place of the boil, a white inflammation, or baheret levana, or a white bright spot, levana adam damet, or a red-white bright spot, baheret levana adam damet, which maybe is the Torah's way of saying pink, right? White, red. What would that mean? Maybe it means white and red, but maybe it means between white and red, maybe pink. At any rate, he's brought to the Kohen. I wonder how Robert Alter translates that one. It's verse 19. A reddish white shiny spot. Okay, he's brought to the Kohen. וראה כהן והנה מראה השפל מן האור. And he's brought to the Kohen, and behold and והנה מראה שפל מן האור, and behold it is, now this is the opposite of amok. Well, actually they translate it here as deeper. But shafal really means flat, like a plane. Low. Okay, they're doing it that way. Okay, so we'll go with that. So I guess it's the same way of saying amok, like we saw before, if it was deeper than the skin. So shafal mina or usira fach lavan, and again we have the white hair. V'tim o kohen nega tzarat hi shachin parcha. And so the hair has turned white. The Kohen declares him unclean. It is the nega tzarat. It is the affliction of tzaraat. B'shachin parcha. It broke out in the area of the boil, right? So the boil heals and leaves basically tzarat in its wake. V'im yir'ena kohen v'hine en bas se'ar, and if the Kohen looks at it and there is no se'ar lavan, if there is no white hair, ushfala inena, and it's not deeper mina or from the rest of the skin, v'hi keha, and it is begun to return to normal, to darken. V'skiroa kohen shivat yamim, then the Kohen shall quarantine him for 7 days. V'im pasad tifseh ba'or, and if it at that point breaks out in the skin, v'timea kohen oto nega hi, then the Kohen declares him unclean. It is an affliction. V'im tachteha ta'amod habaheret lo pasta, and if the bright spot should literally im tachteha ta'amod, if it should stay in its place, if it should not spread out, lo pasta, and it did not, if it should stay in its place and it did not spread out, tzarevet shachin I utiaro kohen, then it is just a scab from the boil. V'tiaro kohen, the Kohen shall declare him clean. Okay, so here we have a boil. Okay, the boil heals up. Did it leave the symptoms of tzaraat in its wake? In other words, a deep blemish and white hair? If so, he's declared impure. If not, if it starts clearing up, then it's not tzaraat. It's just the leftover scab from the shachin, from the boil, and he's declared pure. Okay, verse 24. O basar ki yeh be'oro michvat esh v'ayta michiat hamikva v'heret levana adamdemet o levana. So if or basar ki yeh be'oro michvat esh, so if there's a burn from a fire, okay, in his flesh, v'ayta michiat hamikveh v'heret levana adamdemet o levana. So if the exposed skin within the burn is what is bright white. One second. V'ayta michiat hamikveh v'heret levana adamdemet. If the exposed skin in the burn is a baheret is a how are we translating baheret again? 1 second. A shiny spot. If it is a white/red shiny spot or a white shiny spot, verse 25. We ra'ah kohen, then the Kohen shall take a look at it. V'hine nefach se'ar lavan, and if the hair has turned white, the baheret within the shiny spot, mareh ha'amok min ha'or, and its appearance is deeper than the skin. Tzarat hi, it is indeed tzarat, it is indeed skin blanch. B'nikwa parcha, it broke out within the burn. with where the burn was. V'timeoto kohen, and the Kohen declares him impure. Nega tzarati, it is the affliction of tzarat. Verse 26. Wa'im yir'ena hakohen wahine in babaheret se'ar lavan, and if the Kohen should take a look at it, and there is no white hair within the shiny spot, ushefala inena mina or, and it's not deeper than the skin. Wahi keha, and it has become darker. In other words, the white spot has begun to return to normal. V'iskiroa kohen shivat yamim, and the Kohen shall quarantine him for 7 days. Verse 27. We ra'ahu a kohen b'yom hashvi'i, and the Kohen shall examine him on the 7th day. Im pasat tifseh ba'or, and if it is spread out within the skin, v'timea kohen oto, then the Kohen shall declare him unclean. Nega tzarati, it is the affliction of tzarat. Verse 28. V'im tachteha ta'amod habaheret, but if the shiny spot stays the same, lo pasta ba'or, it did not spread out in the skin. V'hi keha, and it has begun to return to normal. It's begun to become darker. Seta mikvehi, it is just an inflammation or swelling from the burn. V'tiaro kohen, and the Kohen shall declare him clean, ki tzarevet hamigvehu, because it's just a scar from the burn. Okay, I think I've had enough. Any rate, the rest of the chapter goes on to determine other ways of declaring a person or determining if a person is impure or pure, whether he has tzara'at or not. And if he does, he's declared unclean. And if he doesn't, he's declared clean. And then we talk about tzara'at in clothing. And then in chapter 14, then we get into the cleansing, the purification process for someone who has been declared with tzara'at. And then we get into tzara'at for the home. A house can actually catch tzara'at. And that's it. I can't take it anymore. Even though really, we should have gone straight to this, because this is a lot simpler to understand. The tzara'at is notoriously difficult. Maybe next time, if I have the strength, we'll go back and we'll start here in Leviticus 15, even though this is supposed to be part of this week's parsha. But I've had enough. I'm tired. Okay, let's sum it up. Any questions? Any comments before we end the study? We've been going at it for about 3 hours, and really to understand this stuff correctly, especially with the tzara'at. Really, the tzara'at is one of the most technical and difficult parts, the diagnosis of the tzara'at, and confusing, which is why there's so many different ideas about what it means. You really almost have to do a PhD on this one chapter to really make sense of it. Maybe in retrospect, like I said, we should have really just gone into verse 15, which is a lot more straightforward to understand. Okay, but that's that. Any questions, any comments before we end the study? Anybody have any general questions? No? In that case, I'm going to end the study for today. I thank you all for joining us and for joining me. Once again, this has been Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And Be'ezrat Yahweh, we will pick it up again next week. I'll put on some music. And I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, depending on where you are. And we will go out with some nice music. Let's see. All right, why not? I haven't heard this song in ages.
עדודים קלה בואי אל גני עדודים קלה ولك بوي الجميل فرحة جفان نتوري ماني עדודים קלה בואי אל גני עדודים קלה בואי אל גני فرحة كفين نتوري منير فرحة كفين نتوري منير حلف الجشم هسه بعبر ولك حلف الجشم هسه بعبر قومي راعيتي احش الجبار قومي راعيتي احش الجبار
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן